This conference will now be recorded.
So as I mentioned, this program is going to be for next 2 hours. So make your mind accordingly. Obviously, it doesn't matter, right? Spending 2 hours just to shaping your life for the next 10 to 30 years is going to be really valid. So let me make this program more productive. And there are 3 important takeaways as I mentioned. So please make sure you stay till the end of this particular program, so where you can able to understand what the world looks like, what the AI world is going to look like for the next 10 to 30 years. And you can download a free premium ebooks only if you stay till the end of this particular program, okay? And I have arranged an awesome demo on top of AWS where you can able to understand how we deliver an ML models or AI models or maybe like large language models to production, okay? Only if you stay till the end of this particular program, okay? Awesome. So let's get started, okay? So this program, so welcome to MLOps Specialization program, the course demo. You can learn about more about a program later. Let's learn more about MLOps and even LLMOps. Okay, so this MLOps specialization program that we're talking about, it's no more just in MLOps. We will be also talking about how we deliver generative AI tools to the production. Okay, we'll be also discussing about that. Okay, so before we getting started, a quick intro about your host. Who is that? It's me, obviously. Okay, hey folks, yeah, so let me just start navigating my slide. I believe, yeah, I should be visible for you folks somewhere. Hey folks, this is Sharad Kumar, your trainer for MLOps Specialization program. So I will be your host for next 2 hours. Okay, you're going to spend your time with me. Let me just make sure this training is going to be more productive. Okay, so I would request you folks to turn off your cameras because this meeting is getting recorded. Okay, so yeah, just making sure that we will be also uploading this to YouTube. In case if you don't want you to go for public, please make sure you turn off your camera. My team will also they will be removing people in case if they are turned on your camera. I would request you folks to turn off your camera. So perfect. So you can learn more about us. I'm the founder and CEO of Cytron Technologies. I mean, so what do we do? I mean, anything related to, let's say, cloud, AWS, Azure, GCP, right? World leading cloud platforms, or anything related to, let's say, if you want to become a specialist in AI, so we are the best people. I have personally trained more than 5,000 plus people to become an expert in AI, MLOps. Yep. So more about us later. You can learn more about from Cytron Technologies, www.cytrontech.com. So I'm going to turn off my camera, otherwise you'll be having my screen feed towards the right side of your screen. Okay, so can we dive in? Yeah, perfect, here we go. Okay, so let's get started without wasting much of a time. So here are the highlights of this particular demo session. We're going to spend this valuable 2 hours discussing about 3 different things. What is really MLOps is all about? Yes, it's also inclusive of LLMOps. And what it takes to master this MLOps. How do you master this MLOps? What are the things you need to know? What are the tools you need to learn? And then we're going to talk about the awesome numbers. What does a world is going to look like in next 10 to 30 years, for especially for the people who are going to be creators of this AI. Do you remember I mentioned, do you want to be a creator or do you want to be a user of the AIs? I'm talking about what does a career opportunities looks like for the next 10 to 30 years, especially in AI world. Especially today, we're going to talk about MLOps. What is this MLOps? It stands for machine learning operations anyway, but let's try to have more discussion about that in our upcoming slides. Okay, here is a quick task for this for you all. I want to make this session more interactive. Okay, here is a task for you. Okay, I believe you could able to see my screen. All I want you to observe this picture. I love this picture, obviously. So go ahead and observe this particular picture and try to use your chat window, try to describe what is this picture is about. Okay, so then we're going to have more discussion about this. Okay, so yeah, go ahead, try to describe this picture. Pretty much simple task, isn't it? Use your chat window, try to describe whatever it comes to your keypad, just type it, send it. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, use your chat window. Here we have Nuti just described it's a dog walkers at a park. Awesome description. Here we have Venkatesh is saying it's a dog exhibition. That's an awesome description, Venkatesh. So obviously we know that this is a beautiful picture of a park, isn't it? Yes, you can see it's an awesome place where we want to spend our time, isn't it? Yes, obviously I love to be there and spend the time with my dog. Obviously we can see there are a lot of trees outside, right? And we can see there are a lot of dogs. And we can able to differentiate a few more things here. So it's not just one breed of dog. We can see a different breeds of dogs here. And I can see a dog which is carrying a ball in his mouth. I love it. Perfect. I can see a path where I can walk. I can see a lot of grass here. Okay. But that's not the question that I want to ask. right? But my question is a bit different. What is this different question is nothing but, here's my question. How do you know this is a picture of a park? That's what my question is. Okay, that's where I want to get started. Tell me, how do you know this is a picture of a park? Who taught you this is a picture of a park? So few people, they are mentioning it's a dog park. How do you know this is how the dog looks like, right? So I'm going to just play some game with this. Let's say I'm going to take this particular picture, folks. Okay, I'm going to take this particular picture. I'm going to display this particular picture to this newborn baby. Okay, let's say this newborn baby can be less than 1 year old. You think this baby could able to recognize the same exact things that you could able to recognize from that particular picture? Do you think this baby could able to recognize this is a picture of a park, this is a dog, this is a tree? Definitely not, right? So a baby barely could able to recognize his mother and father, but apart from that, a baby doesn't know anything else, right? So what if I display the same exact picture to this particular, a bit grown up person, right? A grown up child otherwise. So yes, definitely, this particular person could able to recognize a few objects from that particular picture, definitely, right? So what I'm trying to explain, let's say if I put this entire growth cycle of a human being as a graph, right? So let's say the things that we learn, it exponentially grows up, right? So consider that the kid will get educated, then he will be going from primary school, he will be learning how to make friends, he will be learning from his parents, he will be learning from his teachers, right? So then let's say we'll be getting into college, a degree, where then we will be getting a job. So what is happening in each and every phase of a human growth cycle, we'll be keep on learning something, right? We exponentially keep on learning something, and eventually it will get better. So why, I mean, is this example somewhere related to what we're talking about today about AI? Definitely yes. See, what we're calling it as AI today, we are the best examples of that. So we are the living examples of what we're talking about AI. So what is AI? At the end of the day, let's say consider that we are biological machines. Consider that this newborn baby, he or she might be born with an empty brain. So then he will be started learning things, right? He will be learning how to walk, recognizing a people's, learning things, learning from books, right? So consider that as a human beings, we learn, we consume a data in many different patterns. I mean, consider that we consume our data through our eyes. I mean, we consume visually by seeing things. We consume our data through our ears by hearing things. We consume our data through a sense. We consume our data through smelling things, right? Yes, obviously, we can smell the biryani. We know that it's a biryani, right? Yeah, obviously, that's how we consume our data. So, and I can see that, folks, there are few candidates, they are saying, okay, so I'm not audible. I believe I'm audible for you, folks. Okay, so please check your connectivity. Just make sure that you rejoin in case if you have a worse connectivity. Just refresh and rejoin. Okay, so then it might help. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly send the chat for that particular person. That's awesome. Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. Let's get started. So we know that we are the best examples of what we're talking about AI, right? So today in the outside the market. So let's try to understand what the world is going towards. Let's say the way we could able to learn a data and way we could able to make some decisions, because today as a grown human being, you could able to make a decisions, you could able to make predictions what's going to happen, right? So consider that the one of the best example is you made, let's say you made a decision to join this particular program, you made a decision to spend your valuable 2 hours with me. That's a decision that you took, believing that, so where I can able to add some value to your life, maybe to be part of AI industry for next 10 to 30 years, for example, right? So the way we could able to learn a data and way we could able to make a decisions and predictions. So today, human being is trying to teach the same exact things to this dumb machines, obviously, right? So we are talking about the way we could able to learn a data. We want to teach the same exact data to this machines, right? A machine can be a server, it can be a PC, and it can be any edge devices like this, okay? So let's throw a simple example where we can able to understand this in a very simplest fashion. So we are talking about the data. Obviously, a data, let's consider that we do have a very simple CSV file. Consider that we do have a CSV file here. So what does this CSV file holds? Let's say this CSV file has around 30,000 data points. I mean, let's say we have 30,000 rows in it. It's a 3 years of old data, what we call it as historical data. So what kind of a data I do have here? let's say I collect the amount of electricity that you consume from your home. Let's say I put up some sensors in your home. Let's say I collected how much electricity your washing machine, your water geyser, it can be any electrical appliances that you have in your home. Let's say I collected this data for last 3 years. So maybe I have collected the voltage, the current, and the bills that you might have paid for the last 2 years, right? Let's consider that these are the data points that I collect. Okay, so this is called historical data. So the goal for me is pretty much simple. I want to teach this data to a machine. Okay, I want to teach this data to a machine. So what happens? A machine tries to understand the pattern from that particular machine. So what do you mean by understanding a pattern? It's nothing but it tries to understand how much electricity you consume during your maybe in a spring, it may be in a summer, it may be in a winter. It tries to understand how you consume an electricity. So then it produces something called a machine learning model, which is going to be a final end product, obviously. So once we have this machine learning model, we can ask this model to make some decisions, make some predictions. Let's say I'm going to ask this ML model to make a forecast saying that what will be my electricity bills looks like for the next 6 months. I can able to literally ask, so I can able to know what my first month bill is going to look like, what's the second month, blah, blah, blah. So what does a 6 months bill looks like? It's called forecasting, right? We can able to forecast what's the bills that are going to be. Just imagine such kind of a use case in a big scale perspective. Let's say we could able to give us solutions for the MNCs saying that how you can able to save your electricity, right? So how do you cut down your electricity costs, right? So there are multiple use cases you can able to solve today in AI industry. This can be the one which I mentioned. Maybe you want to work, maybe you want to work with the health sector or financial sector, something related to the computer vision that you want to solve. So consider that instead of teaching some tabular data, I want to teach the difference between a cat and a dog. Let's consider it's a cat, and let's say I'm going to take a bunch of pictures of dogs, right? So let's say I'm going to teach the pictures of a cats and the dogs, so where my machine will try to understand how the difference between a cat and a dog. Let's say then I'm going to put up a camera in front of my device. So then I'm going to put a cat in front of my camera. So then my machine could able to recognize there is a cat that is standing in front of your camera. So what we're calling it as computer vision. So anything that we can do with the pictures, and it can be a videos, for example, right? So the application of AI is everywhere. It doesn't matter whether you're going to work with, whether it's an IT organization or non-IT organization, the use case of AI exists everywhere. It's a huge market, what we could able to say. But we do understand this stuff, definitely. But the question is, what's a typical workflow of creating a successful machine learning model looks like? So how do you make a successful machine learning project? Okay, to understand this, let's get into this awesome slide. Okay, this slide is going to get some idea for you to understand how this machine learning life cycle looks like, or maybe the pipelines will looks like, for example. So let's get started. So as we are discussing, consider that as a human beings, we consume our data in many different fashions, right? We consume our data through our eyes by smelling things like biryani, smelling the biryani, right? That's a data. We know that that's a biryani. Yeah, something similar to that. A machine can able to consume a data in many different types. So consider that your data can be a picture, as I mentioned. It can be a JPEG, as I mentioned. Your data can be a CSV file. Your data can be in the format of JSON, or it can be a simple text file, for example, right? You can consume a data, and machine can able to consume a data in many different types. Okay, perfect. What is the first step in the process? What we call it as data preparation. So we call it as data preparation. So what is this data preparation? In the process of creating a successful ML model. So data preparation is nothing but what we do it in our kitchen, basically. Like if you are a chef, I mean, if you like to cook a food, if you, let's say what we do, if you want to prepare your favorite recipe, first we go to a market, then we buy some vegetables, and then we come back to our home, we start cleaning those vegetables, we remove unnecessary stuff, then we put some ingredients and masalas, then we prepare our favorite recipe. Right? That's what exactly data preparation is all about. So what do you mean by that? Let's say the real-time data that is coming from your market, the real-time data that is coming from your clients, that comes with a lot of garbages in it. It will have a missing values, outliers. We start using tools to prepare and clean and transform the data if it is necessary. Basically, we'll be cleaning the data, pretty much simple. So then we do talk about something called experimentation. So the entire model building exercise is experiment. You cannot produce the best quality of an ML model in a one single shot. It's an iterations. You do experiments to produce the best ML model. So the goal for us is pretty much simple. Let's say if I want to put it in a pretty much in a layman terms, the game that we are playing with AI is all about, we have a pile of data sitting in an organization. We want to take this data, teach a data to a machine tries to understand the pattern. From the data, then it produces a machine learning model. But to make this happen, we do have multiple workflows. First workflow is preparing your data. So then comes experimenting. So this is where we do call it as data engineers and data scientists. They will be using IDEs like Jupyter Notebooks or VS Code. This is where these folks will write a lot of Python code, maybe R or any different programming languages. So why do they use Python programming, for example? Because the goal for us to take a data, teach a data to a machine. But where is your data is coming from? What kind of a machine that you're using? So you need to define everything in the Python code. So that's where we use these IDEs to define everything. So once we have defined, once we have a code that is ready, so then we pick a machine that is ready and we start teaching a data to this machine. So what we call it as model training. So we train our training data. So it tries to understand the pattern from the data. So then once the model is ready, we test our ML model with a test data that is a pattern. So then if you're really satisfied with the test results, then in the next process will be started taking this model and will be started registering this model to model registry is what we call. So as I mentioned, throughout the life cycle of your ML project, you won't be just producing one ML model, you'll be producing multiple ML models. You might have first version, version 2, version 3, maybe version N, right? But how do you version these different versions of models that you do have? So this is where model registries comes into the picture, the kind of tools that we use in order to version your ML models. So then comes deployment of your ML models to the production. So consider that the industries, they will be focusing on deployment in various different patterns. Maybe I want to Dockerize my ML model, I want to deploy to the Docker platform, maybe real-time endpoint, to the Kubernetes. There are endless of possibilities. Consider that in this perspective, we are Dockerizing our ML model and then we are deploying it to the production. So what happens once your model has been deployed to production? Then comes your developers who will be creating a front-end applications. Maybe I want to create an Android app, maybe a website where my customers, my clients can able to use this to invoke a model that is deployed on a Docker platform. So this can be a typical workflow of creating a machine learning model looks like, but it takes more than this to build the successful ML pipeline. So we will be having a discussion about that in this further slides. So we do definitely understand what is machine learning is all about. It's all about study of an algorithm or a mathematical model. It's putting it in a pretty much in a layman terms. It's all about teaching a complex mathematical models to your machine. So your machine understands this complex mathematical models. So then we can ask this machine to make some decisions, some predictions, right? Yeah, so as I mentioned, our data scientists or data engineers, what we are talking about, so they will be using a various different programming languages. It can be Python, it can be R, it can be even today C++ or Java. It's possible to build your ML model. Perfect, we got it, right? We do understand all this stuff already, but the unanswered question is still, what is MLOps, machine learning operations? Still, there is no answer to that. Let's try to understand that. Okay, let's get started. Let's try to understand, before we getting started with MLOps, let's try to understand what the world is actually looks like today. So this is called the current state of machine learning. So this is a data that we have collected from AWS AI Conclave, which we attended in Bangalore last year. So what AWS said, where every industry is standing in terms of machine learning. What's the current state of machine learning? So this is what exactly will give a more clarity what the world is going to look like for the next 10 to 30 years. Okay, let's go back. Let's do some time travel. Let's do some time traveling and let's go back to last decade. Do you love to do time travel? Yes, I'm not actually practically doing time travel. Let's say let's go back to last 10 years ago. Okay, let's try to understand what just happened over there. So I'm talking about early 2010, 2005. Let's say we will be considering that particular year. Let's say what's happening at that particular year. Every organization at that particular year, like they had a lot of data sitting in their organizations, but they are doing nothing with that particular data. So that's the time they started hiring someone called data engineers or data scientists, someone who can able to build an ML model for them. Perfect. So the focus for every organization last 10 years is just to build ML model. But operationalizing that ML model to the production, I mean, operationalizing and getting and reaching the customers, making some money is not at all a plan. What do you mean by that? So last 10 years ago, every organizations are just building ML models. So if you want to get into the AI industry, let's say you can be a data scientist, data engineer, ML engineer. If you have a good skill sets and in-depth knowledge of Python, data science skill sets like statistics, algorithm, you are really hired. But today, that's not something like that. So still, if you are going to be a data scientist, but the biggest question mark is, are you capable of delivering your ML models to production? Do you have any experience in working with an automation tools? Is the biggest question mark for every folks who are in AI industry. And again, when it comes to productionization process of your AI models to production, there's a lot of different opportunities that is waiting for you, even if you're not from AI industry. Let's have a discussion about that. Let's try to understand what's happening today. I'm talking about let's say the end of 2023, what just happened. So let's say we are talking about by end of let's say 2023, the 53% of organizations, they already started productionizing the models they have built, and it took an average of 9 months for every organization. That means today organizations, they started productionizing the models they have built for the last 10 years. That means today this 53% of organizations, they started building ML pipelines to deliver their models to production. That means today there's a huge demand for the professionals who do understand the MLOps tools, or maybe the techniques you can able to use to build an ML pipelines to deliver your ML models to production. Actually, saying that, let's say by end of 2024, I'm not talking about next 10 years ago, I'm not talking about next 15 years ago, I'm talking about by end of 2024. This year, it's expected that 75% of organizations, they will shift their models which they are prototyping to the production. That means they will be started operationalizing their AI in the market. So this is where the opportunity really comes for you. It's a best time for you to upskill yourself into let's say in MLOps. Okay, so quick check, folks, just checking if I'm audible for you folks, because I can see a few participants, they mentioned, okay, I'm not audible. Give me yes in the chat window if I'm audible for you folks. Hit me yes. Let's get a quick acknowledgement and let's get started. So thank you, Ayush, for confirming. So give me yes in the chat window if I'm audible for you folks. Let's get started. That's perfect. Okay, I believe I am audible for you folks. That's great. Okay, so I can see there are a few people, they say is okay, there's some echo. Yeah, perfect. Okay, that's awesome. Thanks for acknowledging. So now let's get started, folks. We do understand where the world is currently in, right? So we do understand what's the current state of machine learning in every organizations today. Okay, 1 second. Let me just shift my microphone. Probably there might be some issue with my microphone. 1 second, folks. Let me just pick my microphone. One second. Here we go. Perfect. Yeah. So now I should be audible. I guess now it should be more perfect than before, I believe. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's perfect. So let's get started. I guess now I'm audible for everyone. So yeah, that's great. Okay, thanks for letting me know that. Okay, let's get started. So now we are having a discussion about, okay, so we do understand what's happening in the current state of machine learning. So where every organizations today, if someone from AI industry, where they will be traveling, how does their work is going to look like. So we are talking about productionizing AI models to reaching their customers for the next 10 to 30 years. Okay, now let's get started. Now let's try to understand what is really MLOps is all about. Still the question remains same. What is MLOps? MLOps stands for machine learning operations. So MLOps is basically a set of practice for collaboration and communication between the different stakeholders who are part of building ML projects actually. So what do you mean by that? So as I mentioned, MLOps is all about building automation to deliver your models to production. Who is part of building these ML projects? Is that only a data scientist and operational professionals? Are they only people who are responsible for building ML models? Definitely not. There are many different stakeholders who are part of this bigger journey. So for example, let's say we start from someone called data engineers or maybe data analysts, someone who is going to build a data pipelines to harvest the data, clean and prepare a data. So then comes someone called data scientist. He will be taking our data from our data engineers, then he will be building an ML model. Then comes our ML engineers, someone who is responsible for taking a model and going ahead and deploying the models to production. So followed by that, So we will be having an MLOps engineers, someone who will be taking care of deployment of an infrastructure, taking care of building pipelines, all those stuff. So basically the MLOps is all about the collaboration and communication between the stakeholders. So as a MLOps is an automation. By applying this automation, you can able to increase the quality and simplify the management process of how you build, train, and deliver your ML models to production. So putting it in a very simple layman terms, MLOps is all about building an automation to deliver your machine learning models and deep learning models to large scale production environment. As simple as that. So saying that, let's go to the high level view of MLOps. Okay, what does the MLOps looks like in a high level? So MLOps as a discipline, as I mentioned, it's an intersection between the various different domains. For example, it's an intersection between a machine learning, DevOps, and data engineering. So what we really call it as MLOps basically. Let's say this intersection of these practices, when they are coming together, they really drive a value in how we build, deliver, and manage your machine learning models actually. So definitely when it comes to an MLOps as a discipline, it is enabled by the core set of practices. Once we have a people's process and technology, once they are coming together, then only we can able to implement MLOps in any different kind of an organization. So saying further, let's try to understand the challenges currently that we do have in MLOps actually. So consider that in the process of creating and managing a machine learning workflows, we ran into a lot of different challenges definitely. So we know that ML model building involves multiple steps. For example, let's say data preparation step, model training step, or model deployment step. So not only we have these steps, there really lot goes into stitching this different things together. Basically, we need to stitch our data preparation with, let's say, a model training. We need to stitch our model training with model deployment. Okay, let's try to understand this in a much better way. So let's get started. So what do we do in data preparation? So what do you think we do in a data preparation, especially when it comes to the data preparation step? So here, in this particular step, you might contain one to many tasks. Let's say, for example, taking a raw data and eventually transforming that into, let's say, training data, testing data, validation data, for example. So taking a data and splitting into multiple chunks, pretty much simple process. So then comes in a model training step. So what do we do in a model training step? In this particular step, you might have some additional steps inside your model training. So whether you're doing single model training, or you might be doing different experiments using hyperparameter optimization. So that's what exactly I'm talking about. You cannot produce the best quality ML model in one single shot. Our data scientist will be doing experiments to figure out the best version of ML model. He might do multiple iterations to figure out the best version of your ML model. So consider that now you do have multiple versions of ML model. Let's say the current version is version 3. Okay, so now we need to go ahead and deploy this ML model to production. So how does the production looks like? So especially when it comes to your model deployment, you might have only one step in a workflow, or you could have many tasks underneath it. For example, you might want to create a multiple stages for deploying your ML model. For example, let's say I want to create a staging environment and I want to create a production environment, right? So what do you mean by a staging environment and production environment? Let's say I have a latest version of my ML model, the version 3. Initially, I will deploy my version 3 of my ML model to the staging environment. And this particular staging environment is not publicly accessible to your clients. It is only accessible for your internal team. For example, it can be for data scientists or senior data scientists, maybe for your internal team only. So because we deploy our ML models to the staging environment for doing further testing, because you need to see how your models are really going to work in a production. To test that, we deploy your models to staging environment first. So here our data scientist, maybe a senior data scientist, they do further testing. They check whether your model is working exactly based on their interpretations. And if you're really satisfied with the model quality and its performance in a staging environment, then you go ahead and deploy the same version of your ML model to your production. So once you deploy the latest version of your model to production, then only your clients comes into the picture. They started utilizing the latest version of a model that you have built. So you will be having a different stages in the process of you deploying ML models. Not only you might be having a different stages, but you will be having a more control over this particular stages. So here we don't want to automatically deploy your ML models to this different stages. Instead of that, we need to manually approve your model before they are deploying to the stages. For example, let's say if you want to deploy your ML model to staging environment, you need to approve your ML model by clicking, let's say, an approval button. So consider that whoever who is responsible for that, maybe a senior data scientist, he reviews a model, then he clicks on this approve button, then only the model will get deployed to your staging environment or to your production environment. So we will be having a more control over your environments over there. So what I'm trying to say, so there are a lot of different steps, there are a lot of different dependencies has to work together to ultimately build this and build out something that provides an iteration across a life cycle and that provides an end-to-end traceability in how you build, train, and deploy your ML models to production. Because monitoring the entire infrastructure is also really important when it comes to MLOps here. So let's get started. Now let's try to understand the one more term that we regularly heard in industry. So probably when we talk about MLOps, most of you folks might have also know what is this DevOps is. DevOps is, again, that is something you think most of the time. So DevOps is nothing but MLOps, definitely not. So DevOps and MLOps are completely different, but there are some similarities here. So let's say the challenges that we do have in operationalizing ML models has some common things comparing with a software production. For productionizing your software, we do use DevOps. So DevOps is again an automation practice to deliver your new software to the production. But MLOps is again an automation practice in order to deliver your newer version of your ML model to production, basically. So the most common things we do use in MLOps, so comparing with DevOps, the CI/CD practices that we are using in DevOps are source and version control practices that we are using in DevOps are common in MLOps. So this is where the advantages comes to, especially for the people who are migrating from DevOps industry to MLOps industry. Okay, so to understand this complete process in a very simple way, why don't we mention a simple story? Okay, here I want to discuss about a very simple story where you can able to understand the complete workflow in MLOps actually. So to understand the different flavors of tools that we do use in MLOps, let's get started. So let's go to 2020. Okay, again we are doing a time travel and let's say we are going back to 2020. Let's say in 2020, let's consider there is a data scientist. Let's say he is building an ML model for a theater owners. I'm talking about for theater owners. Let's say he's trying to build an ML model to predict how much tickets they're going to sell or how much revenue they're going to make by selling the tickets. Let's say this is what the ML model our data scientist is going to build. But let's say we are talking about year 2020. Let's say my data scientist didn't implemented any kind of automation. He didn't worry about any kind of automation. He has prepared a data manually, trained it, and he deployed it manually everywhere. There's no automation at all. And this particular data scientist assured a client saying that this model is going to perfectly work fine for the next 3 years. But that did happen. The model got failed in next 3 months itself. What could be the possible reason? Let's try to understand, let's try to analyze this particular problem. Why this model couldn't able to work? Why this model did fail in next 3 months itself? So just imagine what does happen in 2020. That's the time the world is hit by COVID-19, right? Isn't it? So obviously once the COVID-19 has been hit in the world, so no one went to theaters. People started gradually reducing for going for theaters. So what do you mean by that? So this is where your customer behavior is changing actually. So people who are going for theaters, now they started gradually reducing for going for theaters. And let's consider that another behavior of your customer. Obviously we didn't go for theaters for watching movies. During lockdown we started watching more movies. How does it happen? Obviously we're not going for theaters, OTTs. You know what happened even in COVID time in a lockdown, a lot of new OTTs born and a lot of other existing OTTs has been skyrocketed. We started watching more movies. Again, there's a changes in your customer behavior. And even after COVID today, I can say there are a very small number of people who might have stopped going for theaters because if I wait for next 15 days, I can watch the same movie in my OTT. So here I'm talking about 3 different customer behaviors. Okay, he couldn't able to monitor this customer behavior changes because he didn't implemented any kind of model monitoring tools what we discussed. So model monitoring tools we're going to use in order to detect your customer behavior. Technically we call it as data drift, a concept drift, for example. In case this data scientist could have implemented any kind of model monitoring tools, he could have just came to know that there's a changes in your customer behavior. That means he could have just taken a new data that is available. He could have retrained this ML model. So then he could have produced the new version of your ML model. That model could have worked perfect with the new behavior of your customer. So this is one side of a story. Let's try to understand the another side of a story. We are talking about the changes in your customer behavior. We do have three different behaviors. That means we do have three different versions of your data. So when it comes to an AI industry, we need to also use tools that we can able to use it for versioning your data. So there is a very specific, there are open source tools, there are cloud-based tools we can able to use in order to version data. For example, if I want to mention one of a very famous open source tool, we can mention DVC, which stands for Data Version Control Tool, that we can able to use it for versioning your data. Or let's say when we talk about cloud platforms like AWS or Azure or GCP, they got their own tools that you can able to use it to version your data. So let's go to the one step next. Let's say here comes our data engineers and data scientists. They will be writing a lot of Python code, or maybe any different programming languages, doesn't matter. So tell me, if you're a data scientist or you might be a software engineer, tell me how many times the code that you might have written has been changed. Definitely, right? You cannot just mention numbers. It can be multiple times the code that you might have written has been changed. So have you ever managed to version this particular code? So this is where code version tools comes into the picture. So source code versioning tools, probably you might have heard about GitHub or maybe Git. So we'll be also understanding and we'll be learning this Git based tools, how we can able to use it to version your code. And again, as we discussed, so in the throughout the process of building your ML projects, you're not going to stick to only one version of your ML model. We're going to produce multiple versions of your ML models. You might have version 1, version 2, version 3. How are you going to manage the different versions of this ML model? So you can ask me a question. So Sharath, can't we use GitHub itself for that? Or you can ask a question, can't we use GitHub itself for versioning a data? Definitely not, you cannot use it. GitHub is not made for versioning a large files or a large data. So this is where, especially when it comes to versioning your ML models, we specifically call it as model registries. We're going to learn about different model registries in multi-cloud. And if I want to mention one of a very famous open source tool, MLflow. MLflow is a must known tool, I would say, for every professionals who are going to get into the AI industry. Is a tools. It's called model registry that we can able to use it for versioning your ML models, or maybe to versioning your experiments, basically. So, and then comes, once you have a best version of your model, the next step in a workflow, we pick up this best version of a model. So then we integrate that with CI/CD pipelines. Let's say, when it comes to the deployment perspective, each and every organization, they follow different strategies in deploying your ML models to production. So consider that maybe there is an organization, they want to deploy their ML model to the cloud-based environment, to the real-time endpoint. Maybe an organization want to deploy their model to the batch endpoint. Maybe an organization want to deploy their model, maybe they want to containerize, Dockerize their model, they want to deploy to the Docker platform. So they want to deploy to the Kubernetes infrastructure, maybe they want to deploy to the serverless framework, they want to deploy to an IoT devices, like edge devices, and maybe an organizations want to deploy their ML models to let's say to mobile phones, for example, maybe your Android app, maybe something like that, right? So there are endless of possibilities where organizations uses in order to deploy their ML models to production. So now we do understand the process, we do understand the different flavors of tools that we do use in order to productionize your ML model to reach to the production, to reach your customers. So now, how do we master this MLOps? What are the things that we need to learn? So let's have a discussion right now. How do you master this particular MLOps? We'll start our discussion talking about the MLOps components. What do you mean by components? The things that involves in the process of building this end-to-end ML pipelines. So the first step in a workflow, obviously the use case discovery. So use case discovery, definitely any organization should have a proper viable use case. When we talk about viable use case, first of all, they need to have a proper access to data. They need to have a proper data resources. Otherwise, let's say if an organization doesn't have an access to data, if they don't have a data infrastructure, there's no talking about AI, there's no talking about generative AI, or there's no meaning of talking about anything like into data science. So any organization should have a proper use case, right? So then a data engineering step, this is where our data engineers build a data pipeline, because not for every organization your data will be centralized, your data will be scattered. So your data engineers will be building data pipelines to harvest the data. They build ETL pipelines. So then comes machine learning pipeline building exercise. This is where we build machine learning pipelines to do automation in the process of automated data preparation, model training, model evaluation, and model deployment. So then comes model deployment step, then comes production monitoring. So first, let's get started with a business understanding. So they do use case identification, they understand the data, then do the feasibility study. It's all about whether they have access to data, whether it is feasible for them to get into this process. So let's consider that they have a use case, they have a data. Let's go to the next step. This is where we do data preparation. As I mentioned, we start cleaning the data. Then comes picking up the best algorithm. So we do have various different algorithms, whether you need to use TensorFlow, Apache MXNet, classification program, regression problem, any kind of a problem, you pick the right algorithm for that. So then you will be started building this ML models. And again, as I mentioned, model building exercise is an experiment. You cannot produce most of the time you cannot produce best quality of ML model in a first iteration itself. That's why you do multiple iteration 1, iteration 2, iteration 3. So in order to produce the best version of your ML model. So once you have a best version of your ML model, the next step in a workflow is you'll be doing a model evaluation. So where you will be calculating a metrics based on the model that you have produced, which this metrics is going to helpful for you to decide whether it's a good model, can I go ahead and deploy to the production. So then comes planning for serving this model, going ahead and deploying this model to the production. So when it comes to deployment step, this is where we build an automation. Maybe you want to Dockerize your ML model, maybe you want to deploy it to the Docker platform. You do all the kind of automation. So then you do operate it. So then once your models are in operations, then you will be using your model monitoring tools, not just model monitoring tools. I would say that because you need to monitor the complete infrastructure that you do have. You do have an infrastructure for a data, training your ML models, CI/CD pipelines. You need to monitor the complete infrastructure. We use these model monitoring tools to monitor your infrastructure and your model. You learn the lessons from it and you keep on optimizing this. So saying this, let's get started to the very important slide. So this slide literally helps you to understand how does an end-to-end ML pipelines looks like. It doesn't matter whether it is the classical ML model pipelines or maybe the generative AI ML pipelines, they work similarly. So let's get started. So ultimately, every organizations today, they want to transform from automated ML workflows to incorporated CI/CD practices. They want to move from this to this. So this, let's say when we talk about this incorporated CI/CD pipelines, this particular architecture that we're going to discuss, it's called the level 4 architecture. So what do you mean by that? See, when we talk about MLOps, the implementation of an MLOps, we mentioned something called MLOps maturity level. See, not every organization on a day one, they will be implementing complete automation to deliver their model to production. They go from step by step. So the level, they start their journey from level 0. So level 0 is no automation at all. Everything is done manually, data preparation, model training, and model deployment. So once they go for level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4, the level 4 is the highest level of automation that you can able to implement today. The level 4 architecture, what we call it as automated retraining pipelines, basically. So where your data preparation will be automated, model training will be automated, model evaluation, model deployment, model monitoring, and again, if something going wrong in your production, triggering your pipelines again to recreate another version of your ML model. So everything is automated here. So in order to understand the level 4 architecture, let's get started with the ML project identification. Obviously, let's consider that an organization has a use case. Okay, we don't want to discuss much about that. Okay, let's get started with the data. So we do understand already your customer behavior will change. That nothing, it doesn't mean, it's all about your data will definitely change. So in order to manage your data, we'll be using a data version control tools in order to version your data. For example, it can be DVC or something on AWS or Azure or GCP. So then comes data pre-processing step. What we do in a data pre-processing step. So this is where we take a data, we clean it and prepare it and transform it if it is necessary. So this is where our data engineers comes into the picture. Obviously, our data engineer will be writing a code. And again, this code has to be versioned. That's why we'll be integrating code repositories. For example, it can be GitHub, something on AWS. AWS has code commit, Azure has Azure repos, GCP has Google Cloud's repositories, which you can able to use it for versioning your code. So then comes a model building exercise. When it comes to model building exercise, our data scientist will write a code to train your ML model. Again, this particular code that is written by a data scientist will be version. And now let's talk about the model training process. This is where we take a data, we start teaching a data to a machine. So this is where we'll be also integrating a feature stores. What do you mean by feature stores? So consider that if you want to train an ML model, you need to have a features, you need to have a data. So consider that the use case that we discussed. So consider that if I want to build an ML model to forecast your electricity bills. So the kind of a features that we might have. So I will have a voltage as a feature, the current as a feature, I might have a bill amounts as a features. So these are features, what I'm talking about, the voltage, the current, the bill amounts, right? So you might have a multiple features. For example, I might have another feature called a power. So consider that together with voltage, current, and bill amounts, let's say this is a version 1 of my feature. Let's say together voltage, current, bill amounts, and power, let's say this can be the version 2 of my features. I can use this different versions of features to build, to solve a different problems for that particular client. So what is feature store? Feature store, putting it in a layman terms, it's a schema repository where we version our features. So now we pick the best version of our features and we fetch the data from it. Then we start training your ML model. As a result, we will be producing a model artifacts. ML models. Model artifacts is nothing but it's a combination of your ML models and a lot of metadata along with that. So again, as I mentioned, throughout the life cycle of your ML project, you won't be just producing one version of ML model. You might have version 1, version 2, version 3. How are you going to manage the different versions of your ML model? This is where we will be integrating a model registries. It can be MLflow, which is an open source tool, or when we talk about AWS, they have SageMaker, they have their own model registry. Azure Machine Learning Studio, they have a model registry. Vertex AI in GCP, they have their own model registry that you can able to use it to version your ML models. So then comes the deployment step. This is where we'll be picking the best version of your ML model, integrating that with the CI/CD pipelines. Then comes operation. So now we put that in a production, so your users will be start using your ML models in a production. So then we have a feedback loop where we have integrated automated quality gates. So what is this automated quality gates? How we can able to use this automated quality gates? So this automated quality gates can able to help you to make a decision. Can I go for a production? So consider that the kind of a model that you produce. Let's say I have a version 3 of an ML model. I want to deploy this to the production. So how do you make a decision? So here we use automated quality gates to decide whether can I able to register this model to model registry or not. So especially here, our data scientists will be relying on the metrics that we have calculated. For example, let's say I have trained a regression model. So I will be relying on a metrics called MSE score. If my MSE score is less than or equal to 7, then only I will register my model to model registry. If this condition satisfies, I register my model to model registry. Otherwise, I don't. So this is how you can able to use your automated quality gates. You can also use your automated quality gates in a data preparation side just to check your data is clean or maybe free from outliers. So you can use this quality gate to do that. And again, followed by that, end-to-end traceability is really does matters, because monitoring your complete infrastructure is really important. Comparing with, obviously we need to also monitor the models that is in a production. Basically we use various different model monitoring tools to monitor your ML model in a production, and we use various different monitoring tools to monitor your infrastructure basically. Perfect. So now you get some idea. Now I believe you got some idea how does the level 4 architecture looks like. So what it takes to build the complete automation in the process of delivering your ML models to production. Perfect. So now you might have a question. Perfect. Sharath, I'm a data engineer. I'm a data scientist. I'm an ML engineer. You might be a DevOps engineer. You might be a cloud architect. You might be a software developer. You might be coming from a testing domain, a testing in a software industry. Can I become an MLOps engineer? Can I be part of MLOps here? Definitely yes. So let's say developing a successful machine learning project definitely involves varieties of experience and requires extreme collaboration among a team. Obviously this is not a process that can be done by one single person. So data scientist is not the only person who is responsible for success. There are many different stakeholders. So consider that usually you can able to expect many different stakeholders in the process of building this ML projects. We'll be having a data analyst, data engineers, data scientists, someone called researcher, applied scientist, ML engineers. So we don't specifically call as DevOps engineers, otherwise we call it as ML engineers. we will be having a developers, testers also will be part of MLOps journey. Okay, but not every organization will have all these roles. Depends on their manpower requirements, how they frame their roles and responsibilities. But in an MNC standards, you could able to expect all these people will be responsible for, let's say, upskilling themselves into MLOps. Let's try to understand what these people do. Let's get started from our data analyst. So what does our data analyst does? So a data analyst will be closely working with a product manager and a business team to drive insights from a user data. Our data analyst obviously will be using tools like SQL, Excel sheets, and other visualization tools like Tableau or Power BI just to generate some insights from a user data. So then comes our data engineers. So what does our data engineers does? Obviously, they build data pipelines to get the data to our organizations. So they use tools like ETL tools, Spark, or big data tools to harvest the data. So then comes our dear data scientist. Obviously, our data scientist is someone who is going to build an ML model, which is going to be part of a final end product. So then comes research or maybe applied scientist. So what is this research or applied scientist? So obviously you cannot expect this kind of a roles in all the organizations, especially in organizations who is working in a cutting edge technologies, maybe Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, maybe those kind of an organizations you can able to expect this kind of a roles. So majorly these peoples will be focusing on building a new algorithms for solving various product related areas. And then we have ML engineers. We call it as deployment peoples. Their work will be overlapped with data engineers, but they will be largely focusing on ML models and related infrastructures. So their work, they will be working closely with a data scientist to deploy the models which is built by them. So then when it comes to DevOps engineers, so we don't call it as a DevOps engineers as I mentioned, otherwise we call it as ML engineers in AI domain. So then comes developers. Yes, developers is also part of this particular game. We can say they are the last piece of a puzzle. So they will be integrating everything that is built by all other team to the main application basically. So I mean, developers are the one who will be creating a beautiful Android apps, web apps, something that is used by your client to invoke an ML model that is built by you. Perfect. So now let us have a quick discussion about, in order to master this MLOps, or maybe what does the different flavors of tools looks like in this particular world. Okay, let's have a quick discussion about that. So here I didn't demonstrated all the tools that is available in the market, but just to get some clarity, the different flavors of tools that we do use in industry. Let's get started. Perfect. So let's forget about MLOps for a second. In order to, what's a traditional way of building, training, and deploying your ML model? The first step in a workflow, we do data collection and labeling. We collect the data, then we do data exploration, cleaning the data. Then comes taking a clean data and teaching the data to a machine. Once machine understands a pattern, then it produces a machine learning model. Then we take that model and then we go ahead and deploy it. That's a traditional process, right? So but in order to make this into an automation, so what are the different flavors of tools we do use? We call it as MLOps maturity stack. So here, let's say we'll be getting started with the development IDEs. What are the different kind of IDEs that we do use today in a market? So especially our data engineers, our data scientists, they will be using an IDEs like Jupyter notebooks, or VS Code, or Spider. What kind of an IDEs that you want to use to write a code? So then comes code versioning tools. Obviously, we write a lot of code and this code has to be versioned. So here we might use tools like GitHub, Bitbucket, or something on AWS and Azure or GCP to version your code. For data labeling, for labeling your data, so we do use let's say the different kind of tools. Every cloud platform has their own data labeling tools that we can able to use for data exploration and visualization. So in order to understand the insights from that particular data, we need to visualize it. So for that we do use range of different tools like pandas, matplotlib, seaborn for example. And for feature engineering purpose, obviously one of a very famous SDK or a tool that we use is sklearn. Let's say if you want to use a no code or a completely a low code tools, feature tool is a commercial tool, and Feast is a pretty much a famous open source tool that you can able to use.
For training your ML models, we use different algorithms or ML frameworks like TensorFlow, XGBoost, sklearn can be part of it. Okay, once you have built your ML model, for a quick POC, you want to do a quick POC, you need to validate the things that you develop is working or not. We will be using the Jupyter notebooks or Streamlit to quickly deploy and to test your models that you have built. So then comes for model debugging and visualization, we use tools like TensorBoard. Neptune.ai is a commercial tool, weights and biases, for example. Then comes model tuning and hyperparameter optimization, because as I mentioned, in a one single shot, you cannot produce the best quality model. For hyperparameter tuning, we might use different tools. It can be Keras tuner or Tune. So then comes experiment tracking. So our data scientists will do experiments, and sometimes he want to do comparison between these experiments that he has conducted. The best tool in the market, which is open source tool, I would say MLflow, but you can also use commercial tools like Neptune.ai or open source tools like TensorBoard. For model packing, obviously once you make a software, we need to pack it, right? Similarly, once you make your ML model, we pack it in order to deployment. So for that, maybe we follow different steps. It can be TensorFlow based packing, PyTorch based packing, or ONNX based packing, or using Kubeflow, especially in case if you're going to deploy your models on Kubernetes infrastructure. So then comes serving your ML model. So where do you serve your ML model? Where do you deploy it? Obviously, I want to deploy it on a cloud. It can be AWS or Azure or GCP. It can be SageMaker. It can be Vertex AI. It can be Azure Machine Learning Studio. So, or maybe on your premises, right? Possibilities are endless. Then comes workflow orchestration. So what do you mean by that? So building a successful ML model, or maybe building this ML pipelines, is nothing but integration of multiple steps, which we call it as orchestration. To build this step-by-step approach, step 1 data preparation, step 2 model training. To build this orchestration, we use tools like Apache Airflow or Kubeflow, ZenML or such other kind of tools. Olohai is a commercial tool if you want to use it. For versioning your data, I mentioned DVC can be one of the best tool that is outside, which is open source, but there are still a lot of tools. Git has its own tool called Git large files, and you can also use commercial tools like Olahai. For model registries, the tools that you can able to use it for versioning your ML models, MLflow is one of the best open source tool that is outside. Are AWS, Azure, GCP, they have their own tools, model registries that you can able to use it. For model monitoring, today every cloud got their own SDKs that you can able to use it for monitoring your ML models, or you can also use open source tools like Evidently AI, which we also will be using, or Seldon or Vitra can be other tools that is available outside. For building your feature stores, so you can use Feast, which is an open source tool, or every cloud today they got their own feature stores that you can able to use it. So this is the different flavors of tools to get some good idea. So how does a tools looks like? So now here is a question. In order to become a specialist in MLOps, let's say tomorrow, once you are in a position where you want to pick a tool for your organization, what are the things that you need to really take care? So the first thing, so whether you're going to pick a open source tool or closed source tools, obviously we do understand that open source tools are always free and they can be easily integrated with your MLOps tools. But the difficulties comes into the picture, especially when you have a very small number of peoples and a few developers in your team. If they're not really good at that open source tool, it can be difficult for you to integrate it. So then comes platform versus a specific tool. Today you can go for a cloud-based platforms, or you can go for a commercial tools. Commercial tools are like a subscription platforms. You can pay a subscription, a monthly subscription, and you can start utilizing their platform. Whether you want to go for that or you want to build your own customized ML pipelines using a cloud or on premises. So then comes, let's say you're going to pick a tool, make sure that it does offers model and production environment monitoring. So we do discussed already the importance of monitoring your models and your infrastructures. Make sure that your model and environments are monitored, and make sure that your bugs are documented and addressed in a time. Then comes making sure that your MLOps team can able to catch up security and compliances consistent time to time. So then comes model templating and cataloging. This can be the very important thing that you need to really take care, because so consider that tomorrow you might be working in an organization. Let's say you're going to build ML pipelines for your first client, and let's say your first client is really happy, but throughout your life, you're not going to work with only one client, but you're going to work with multiple clients. And you don't want to reinvent a wheel again and again. So this is where model templating and cataloging comes into the picture. So definitely, yes, you can able to catalog and you can able to create the template for the workflow that you're creating, for the pipelines that you're creating, definitely. And you can able to reuse this template again and again by making a simple changes for a multiple clients that you're going to work tomorrow. So then comes model training, tuning, and drift management. So when it comes to MLOps, it's all about automation. So the kind of a tool that you're going to pick for your organization, does it offers automated data preparation, model training, model evaluation, and model deployment, and model monitoring? Does it offers automation? So then comes pipeline management. So what do you mean by that? So when it comes to the pipeline management, here comes the stakeholders, because here we don't have one person, we do have multiple stakeholders. We do have data engineers, we do have data scientists, we do have ML engineers, we do have MLOps engineers. So each and every person has a different responsibilities here. Let's say once your pipeline is running, consider that your CI/CD pipeline got failed. And again, does your platform has a feature where you can able to notify or alert a specific data scientist saying that the CI/CD got failed, right? So does it offers an alerting system? Does it offers a triggering process where you can able to trigger alerts and notify the specific peoples in your team? Then comes collaboration and communication capabilities. So this is where you need to ensure that your documents, when you document your commands and questions, and again integrating tools like Slack, or maybe integrating your MLOps pipelines with project management tools like Jira could definitely help you. Saying that, let's now have a discussion about what does the cloud offers in terms of MLOps. So here we will be covering AWS, Azure, and GCP in our program. So why cloud, first of all? So why we need to get started with a cloud platform? So definitely we do understand the world runs today in a cloud. Especially we will be focusing on the three leading cloud platforms outside, that is AWS, Azure, and GCP, because these three cloud platforms offers the majority share in the market. So today, most of the machine learning workloads today in the market runs on these three cloud platforms. There is no doubt about it. So yes, when it comes to MLOps specialization program, we do cover MLOps and DevOps on all these three cloud platforms. We do cover AWS, Azure, and GCP. Not just limited to that, we do also cover open source tools. So why we need open source tools? Okay, so today if you see, the world relies on multi-cloud. There are organizations who run DevOps pipelines on Azure, but they deploy their ML models on AWS. And there are organizations still they're using cloud, but they still use open source tools like Docker, Kubernetes, MLflow, Kubeflow, ZenML, such kind of open source tools. So pretty much we say it's a 360-degree view of MLOps. We get to cover everything that is needed in terms of MLOps on a cloud and open source. Saying that, let's try to understand the different flavors of tools that we will be covering in our program. Starting from Git based tools, yes, we will be getting started with a Git from scratch, understanding how to use tools like GitHub, are working with Git based commands, working with AWS has something called code commit, Azure has Azure repos, Google has Google Cloud repositories. So then comes understanding CI/CD. What does the CI/CD stands for? So continuous integration and continuous deployment. So what is this? CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous deployment, is it's kind of an automation practice that we use in a software industry to deliver your new version of a software to production. Putting it in a very simplest way, consider that there is a developer. Let's consider that there is a developer. He's making some changes to the code. Let's say he's making some changes to the code that he has written. So then he pushed this particular code to a code repository, which is nothing but it can be GitHub, something on AWS or Azure or GCP. So once the code has been pushed to a code repository, where we have an automation to completely, so monitor if there is any changes in the code. If your CI/CD pipelines could able to recognize if there is some changes in a code, it will automatically trigger a build process. So what do you mean by build? Let's say there is a Java developer is writing a Java code, then we finally create .jar file, which can be a final artifact that we produce, an executable jar file. So here, let's say once the developer has made some changes, the build process comes into picture. This is where we started building our software. Then once your build process is succeeded, we notify saying that, okay, your build is succeeded right now. So then we ran a lot of tests. We do a lot of testing on a software. Then once all the test cases has been passed, then we notify, okay, all the test has been succeeded. Then finally, we take that build artifact, then we go ahead and start deploying it. So to understand this process, let's understand this with a pretty much simple example. So consider that there's an e-commerce website. It can be Amazon or it can be your own e-commerce website. Let's say customers are hitting pay now button, which is in a green color, to buy the product. But we know that green is not more attractive, the red is more attractive. So based on a feedback, let's say our developer, now he is making some changes to the code. Basically, he's changing the green color button to red color button. Then he will be pushing this particular code to a code repository. So here we are using GitHub. So here we do have two different branches. We have a dev branch and production branch. So we know that dev branch is for your internal team, production branch is for production. So here we'll be using AWS code pipelines, which is nothing but we will be using a DevOps tools on top of AWS. So once your code has been pushed to your dev branch, automatically your CI/CD pipelines could be able to recognize, okay, there is a changes in the code. It will pull the code. It will start building that particular software. Once your software has been built, you will be producing an artifact, and then you will be planning for deployment. So now you have made changes to the code that is in a dev branch. Now the next step in a workflow, now we need to deploy the new feature that you've developed. Again, we do have different stages here. We don't directly deploy to the production. Instead, first we deploy the new changes to dev, and your new changes that you have in a dev environment, it is only accessible by your team. So here comes your developers or any stakeholders who are responsible. He comes and do further testing. He will just check whether this button is clickable. He will check the functionality of it. If everything works perfectly fine, in the next step, he will be deploying the same feature to the production. So now your final end users, your customers now have an access to the new feature. Now they can start using the red color button to buy the product. So this is how your CI/CD pipelines does work. So we do follow the same kind of a workflow for building MLOps pipelines. So consider that we do have, again, we do have a data scientist, data engineers, someone, they are writing a lot of code and they are pushing the code, let's say a Python code, for example, they will be pushing this code to a code repository. So then comes the first step in a workflow, we'll be doing a data preparation, feature engineering. So once your feature engineering is done, then we'll be doing model training. So everything happens automatically. Not you won't be running this code manually in a Jupyter notebook. Instead, it is running automated. So once your model training is done, then comes model evaluation. So this is where you will be checking, you'll be calculating a metrics. Let's say I will be calculating an MSE score, RMSE score. So let's say my MSE score is 4.5, for example. So this is the metrics I will be relying on to decide whether I can go ahead and deploy this model to production or not. So here comes my quality gate. Otherwise, we call it as a condition step. Here I will be writing a condition if my MSE score is less than or equal to 7. 7 is a threshold that I give. So yes, if this condition satisfies, then only I will register my model to model registry. Let's say I already have version 1, version 2, version 3. So for example, let's say I'm going to deploy the newer version. If this condition satisfies, I'm going to register version 4 of my model to model registry. So now my MSE score is 4.5. Yes, 4.5 is less than or equal to 7. Yes, if this condition satisfies, I have registered the newer version of a model to my model registry. So now, once I have the latest version of my model, then comes my model building process. Let's say I want to Dockerize my ML model, then I want to go ahead and deploy my model to model registry. Sorry, to deploy my model to Docker platform. So now I'm going to pick the latest version of a model. I'm going to Dockerize it. Then I'm going to deploy my model to Docker platform. So here I'm talking about deploying your ML model to model hosting platform. Again, the same process follow-ups.
I'm going to initially deploy my latest version 4 of my ML model to dev environment. Then here I do further testing. My data scientist or maybe senior data scientist, they will be doing a further testing. And if they're really satisfied with the results, in the next step, I'll be deploying the same version 4 of my ML model to the production. So then only it will be accessible to my clients. So this is how the workflow works in ML ops pipelines. Again, the same kind of a strategies, the workflows will be used in delivering your large language models to production. So here we call it as LLMOps, which is nothing but large language model operations actually. So what do you mean by that? So again, LLMOps is not a different technology. It's just an extension of MLOps, what we call it as LLMOps. So here we do have the same process for data preparation and versioning. We'll be having the pipeline design for supervised tuning. So supervised tuning is all about, we are talking about foundation models, taking a foundation models and retraining the foundation models and producing an artifacts of that foundation models, then going ahead and deploying it to the production. So we'll be having again the pipeline execution where we'll be taking the pre-trained foundation models and going ahead and deploying this LLMs into the production. So where we have an automation to come to the picture. There are few things different than MLOps, for example, prompting and prediction and responsible AI. So consider that today we are talking about this generative AI tools. For example, let's try to understand why responsible AI can be more important. So consider that today we talk about a lot of LLMs, lot of generative AI tools. You know what happened to Google Gemini? I mean, Google released Google Bard as Google Gemini. I know, like latestly, Google Gemini has become a bit racist. I mean, you know that it started producing the biased results. Let's say you probably might have heard about it. When Google Gemini has been asked for about Narendra Modi, a Prime Minister of India, and again asking about the Prime Minister of Ukraine. So it has given a biased answer for this. So this is where responsible AI comes into the picture. So basically putting it in a pretty much in a layman terms, responsible AI will be used basically to filter out the results, basically to make sure that to filter all the offensive content and make sure that your responsible AI could able to give the quality content for you. Okay. Saying that, let's try to understand the kind of CI/CD tools that we will be covering in this particular program. So yes, starting from AWS code pipelines, we'll be covering AWS code commit, code build, and code deploy. And when it comes to GCP, we'll be covering the complete GCP DevOps tools like cloud build, cloud source repositories, artifact registries, cloud deploy, and cloud run. And we'll be covering the complete Azure DevOps suite, starting from Azure pipelines, Azure artifacts, Azure repos, Azure boards, and Azure test plans. We will be also covering open source tools like Dockers from scratch. You will be learning how to Dockerizing your ML model, how to deploy to Docker platform. Then comes understanding Kubernetes from scratch, creating Kubernetes infrastructure, deploying a models on top of it. And we'll be also exploring the cloud-based Kubernetes infrastructures. It can be AWS EKS, Azure AKS, or GCP GKS. And model management tools like we'll be covering MLflow from scratch. We'll be also covering DVC, and we'll be also covering Git large files. And talking about the kind of a feature stores that we will be covering in this particular course, we'll be discussing about all the different kind of feature stores that is available in each and every cloud platform, like AWS SageMaker feature store, Vertex AI feature store, commercial feature stores like Tecton. Talking about open source feature stores like Feast will be also covered. So then comes cloud ML services that we'll be covering. So this is where we will be building the level 4 architecture projects, the complete automated retraining pipelines. We'll be covering Amazon SageMaker, Vertex AI, and Azure Machine Learning Studio. But what if, in case tomorrow if you're going to work in an organization, they don't use a cloud? This is where we'll be covering the complete open source tools like Kubeflow. Kubeflow is a framework that runs on top of Kubernetes infrastructure. So where you can able to use Kubeflow for building complete open source ML pipelines. If you know Spotify does use Kubeflow today. And then comes model monitoring tools. We'll be covering the various different SDKs the cloud offers in terms of monitoring your ML models. And we'll be also covering open source tools like Evidently AI for monitoring your ML models. Yes, we'll be also covering AutoML tools. Basically, they are commercial tools outside, because
Not only cloud or open source today, you can also use commercial tools like a subscription platforms like Olahai, Domino Data Labs, Isgazio, Weights and Biases. Like you need to pay a subscription for them, a monthly subscription. You can start utilizing the services for building end-to-end ML pipelines. Then comes post-deployment challenges. So this is where we will be discussing about the post-deployment challenges related to software engineering, ML engineering, the challenges in deploying your ML models to edge devices. So this is what exactly what it takes to master MLOps, and this is what you will be learning in this particular program. To understand this much better, let's get started. Here is our first promise. Let's say the live demo. We have arranged the live demo on top of AWS. I have built the complete end-to-end MLOps pipelines. Let's try to understand how things works over there. Then we will discuss more about our program. Okay, let's get started. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so I guess you should be able to see my screen. Perfect. Okay, so what you are currently seeing on my screen, it's a console of Amazon SageMaker Studio. Amazon SageMaker Studio is one of the most powerful tool that is available on AWS for building complete end-to-end MLOps pipelines. Okay, so for getting started, you can see that the first step in my workflow, here I have my repositories. So what are repositories? Repositories are the location where we keep a code. So you can see that I have two different repository, one repository for building my ML model, another repository for deployment of my ML model. Okay, saying that, here is my repository, and let me just go to a pipeline section. Pipeline section is a section where my pipelines are running. You can see that I have one pipeline group. I have named it as demo March 30. Let's say if I double click and if I go inside that particular pipeline, you can able to notice that I have my pipeline executed once. Okay, I mean, this is a table. Let's say just consider that you can see only one entry in my table. Let's say if I another entry or more entries, you can consider that my pipeline is executed more than one time, right? So I have my pipeline executed once in a past. That means I have one version of my ML model has been produced already. So we'll take a look of this model later, but let's try to understand the workflow in this particular pipeline actually. So before that, yeah, let me just double click and let me just get inside that particular pipeline. Yep, so this is where you can see something called graph. Okay, so this is what exactly I'm talking about, an orchestration. Orchestration is nothing but a step-by-step approach in the process of building your ML models. You can see this block diagram explains how does your pipelines actually work. So before that, let me just try to give an insight what kind of a problem that I'm solving here. So here I'm actually building an ML model to predict an age of an abalone. So what is this abalone? You can able to see my picture on my screen. So this is an abalone, which is kind of a seafood. I mean, in case if you're a non-vegetarian, in case if you love a seafood, probably you might have heard about abalones. Basically, they are sea snails. It's an edible. You can eat a meat in that particular shell. So again, so here we are predicting an age of because in a market today, based on an age of an abalone, the price has been decided. That's why it is really important for us to predict an age of that abalone. So here is a workflow that I have constructed in order to build this abalone model automatically. So the first step in a workflow is pre-processing an abalone data, right? So let's click on this first step, that is pre-processing an abalone data. So what do you think we do in pre-processing step? So in a pre-processing step, this is where we do it's all about, let's say we'll be doing data cleaning, and we'll be producing the three different types of data. That means basically we're splitting a data and we're producing a training data, validation data, and testing data. So splitting a data into three different chunks. And once the data has been splitted, I will be storing all this data into a storage platform in AWS. We call it as S3. It's a storage platform. Consider that it's like a Google Drive in AWS. So we'll be storing all this splitted data in my S3 buckets. So once I have an access to data, once my data is clean, what is the next step in a workflow? Take the data, start teaching this data to a machine. So this is where we do have train abalone model. This is where I'm actually taking a data and training my abalone model. You can see that at end of this process, I'm producing my ML model. When it comes to AWS, we'll be producing model.tar.gz. That's a kind of a format of a data that we produce, which can be a final end product actually. As part of a model training process, we'll be also calculating various different metrics throughout this model training process. Say, I'll be also calculating a metrics like RMSE score on my training data, RMSE score on my validation data. It quite helps a data scientist to understand how good your model is getting trained actually. Saying that the next step in a workflow is evaluating an ML model. Perfect, you have a best model now, but you need to evaluate this ML model, generate some metrics to take some further decision. So when it comes to evaluating my ML model, this is where I will be calculating a various different metrics. So depends on a use case, we calculate various different metrics like MSE score, it can be RMSE score, F1 score, precision, recall, different metrics that we do calculate here. So consider that in this particular use case, I have calculated my MSE score and I have exported this MSE score into my S3 bucket. I have saved it in a file over there. So now in the next step in a workflow, we call it as condition step. So you remember that I mentioned something called a condition step, which is going to help us to make a decision. Can we go ahead and deploy this model to model registry or not? I'm talking about this particular condition step. So which is going to help us to decide, can I go ahead and deploy this model to model registry or not? So this is where my condition step comes into the picture. So this is where I will try to make a decision saying that if my MSE score, let's say if my MSE score, sorry for my writing there, if my MSE score is less than or equal to 7, go ahead and register my model to model registry or not. So that particular condition is actually running in this check MSE abalone evaluation. You can see the output is true, that means my MSE score is actually less than or equal to 7. So now if this condition is true, the next step in a workflow, registering my model to model registry. Now you can see that my model has been successfully registered to my model registry, and you can check my actual MSE score. Yes, it is 4.5. 4.5, obviously it is less than or equal to 7. So that's why my model got registered to my model registry. So this is my workflow. Let me just go to my root directory of my project, and here we have experiments. This is where my data scientist can able to visualize all the iterations that he has done. Then we will talk about model group. Model group is nothing but model registry, folks. It's a place where we start versioning my ML models. Here is my model group. I call it as demo-March 30. Let's say if I double click and if I go inside, and here you can able to see your first version of your ML model. But what else you can see? Yes, I have first version of my ML model, but if my pipeline executed twice or thrice, I might have multiple versions of ML model, but right now I have only one version of my ML model. Now, let me show you how am I going to deploy this ML model to my staging environment. No, I'm not going to deploy to the production directly. First, I'm going to deploy this model to staging environment. How do we do that? You can see that the status of this model, it says pending manual approval. That means it is not yet deployed. It is waiting for my approval to be deployed to the staging environment. So now let me just click on this version 1. Okay, now you can see that the status is still pending. So now take a look, how am I approving this ML model to be deployed to a staging environment? You can see there is an actions button towards the right side. I'm going to click on this update status, and now it is in a pending state. I'm going to click on this approved button. And here as a senior data scientist, I can do some testing. I can mention some commands saying that all okay. And I will simply click save and update. So this is going to approve, and now you can see that the status has been changed to approved. In next few minutes, you will notice that my model is getting deployed to my staging environment, not to the production. Okay, so now how do we check whether my model is getting deployed to staging environment or not? For that, you need to go to something called endpoints in my project repository. Endpoints is a section where you can able to see the models that is getting deployed to dev environment, or maybe staging environment, or to the production environment. So now you can see that it says no endpoint because it's going to take some time, maybe a few minutes, for you to check the model that is getting deployed to the staging environment. So let's wait for a few more minutes to check this model getting deployed to staging environment. Meantime, let's go back to our slides and let's have a further discussion. Okay, so now you do understand what does the world of MLOps actually looks like. So now let's discuss some numbers. MLOps job industry. How does the job market looks like? But we do understand that the AI world is completely different last 5 years ago, and it's completely different what's happening today. Let's say last 5 years ago, let's say if you're really good at data science, you're really good at mathematics, algorithms, statistics and probability, good at Python programming, you're really hired. But today, even though if you are a data scientist, if you don't have an MLOps skill set, it's a biggest question mark today. So MLOps is for whom? Who should learn MLOps, right? Here's an answer. Who should be part of MLOps? Who should learn MLOps? Are you a data scientist? Are you a data engineer or a data analyst? Are you a research or applied scientist? Are you an ML engineer? Are you a DevOps engineer trying to transform into MLOps engineer? Aspiring MLOps professional? Are you trying to understand how to deploy your ML models to production? Are you someone trying to learn Docker's, Kubernetes, AWS, Azure, GCP, DVC, Feast, or MLflow? Are you someone interested to get into AI industry, interested in data? You're the one, someone who can learn MLOps actually. So here, the kind of positions that you need to target is going to really vary, because here you're not going to become a data scientist, but if you are a data scientist already, you'll be upskilling yourself into MLOps. But other than data science roles, there are various different positions. For example, you can become ML engineer, you can become MLOps engineer, for example. Let's say ML engineers are basically deployment people. They'll be taking a model from data scientists and they'll be deploying to production. But let's say when we talk about MLOps engineers are not going to build an ML models, because you'll be having your own team who is going to build an ML model. But when you are an MLOps engineer, you'll be taking care of building pipelines, deploying infrastructure, and managing this infrastructure. Saying that, let's try to discuss the interesting numbers. Let's say, what does the salary range looks like? This is the slide which explains someone who has a 2 to 3 years of experience. Especially in US, it's a biggest market outside. So obviously it starts from 94.5K dollars per year. But let's say if we talk about let's say the market in India, according to sixfigure.com, you can able to cross verify this. Obviously in India, a lot of things are happening. I mean, a lot of tech giants putting a lot of investment in India, and soon India is going to be an AI hub for this world. And today, if you got an MLOps skill sets on your resume, an average salary for someone who has a 2 to 3 years of experience will be starting from 26.6 lakhs according to the MNC standards. Otherwise, you will be lying in a different slab. You might be coming from more than 7 plus 8 plus years of experience. Maybe you want to target MLOps engineers, MLOps lead, MLOps architect positions. So then you might have a different salary slab. So maybe 33% of people's may be lying between 10 to 20 lakhs slab. 42% might lie between 20 to 30 lakhs. 25 people's may lie between 30 to 40 plus above actually. Okay, so do you have let's say dream of getting into AI industry? Definitely yes. This program can definitely help you. So saying that, so let's say if I talk about the ML job vacancy trend, a quite good answer is, instead of we taking a look in this particular slide is from itjobworks.co.uk, and this literally explains the peak, or maybe let's say the peak in the rise of AI jobs around the world. But the good validation is what's really happening around us, right? So try to understand that today we talk more about AI in some fashion. Every organization want to implement AI into their organization. So whether it's generative AI models, classical ML models outside. So you got a use case outside, or you got a company that you can able to work outside in a market. But when is a good time to get started? That's a good question, right? So, but here, honestly, you don't have a much time for that. So what is the answer? Because let's say I want to mention about this particular example, which can give a much clarity. Consider that just in 10 years, the one market has been completely replaced with this particular drones, right? So consider that in early 2009, so where a news reporter or someone who want to make a movie is who is carrying a huge cameras and a chopper, but that particular industry has been completely replaced with the drones in next 10 years. So just consider that 10 years can be the quite a long time, but we don't have 10 years, because consider that one good answer is last 10 years ago, organizations are building ML models, but they're not productionizing it. But now organizations started productionizing these ML models. That's why we are talking more about AI. You can ask a question. So why didn't ChatGPT came to the market last 3 years ago? But it just came to the market last 1 year ago, because they are prototyping, they're building ML models. But now they started productionizing it. And that's why today we are not just talking about ChatGPT. We are talking about a lot of other AI tools outside. We are talking about Llama from Meta. We are talking about Google Gemini. We are talking about Plum from Google, or such other AI tools that is outside. So how can you master this MLOps, and how can you quickly get into the market? Here's our course. So MLOps Specialization program, as I mentioned, we are starting our new batch from April 13th. Yes, our new batch is going to start from April 13th. It's a 2.5 months program. It's really huge. I would say it's a beast. So let me just give you much clarity about this particular program. It's a 2.5 months program. We'll be getting started from April 13th. It's a program on every weekends. Yes, it's a 10 weekends. So I would say the time will be something like this. Let's say if you're joining from India, every Saturday, Sunday, we'll be having a live session starting from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Otherwise, let's say we're joining from EST time zone, your timing will be between 9:30 to 1:30 p.m. Let's say you're going to join from CET time zone, it will be for 2:30 to 6:30 for you. Let me give you the structure of our program, which will be quite interesting for you to know. So when it comes to, let's say, the structure of a program is something like this. As I mentioned, the live hands-on sessions is going to happen on every weekend. So what do you mean by the live hands-on sessions? It's not a webinar or a seminar. You'll be just coming and listening and going. It's a live hands-on session. Each and every projects that I am building on my screen, parallelly you'll be replicating on your screen in the live sessions. So that's how it's going to work. Then comes every Monday, you'll be receiving an access to the recordings of a live session that you attended. And even on weekdays, we do have a session, folks. But this is optional to attend. We call it as debugging sessions. So consider that during a live session, yes, we will build a lot of projects. Maybe you have some bugs, some errors, you couldn't able to resolve it. You can join this debugging sessions, and this debugging sessions are going to be one-on-one. So saying that, when it comes to our MLOps specialization program, we say it's a 360-degree view of MLOps. We get to cover everything that is needed for MLOps in this world. So we do cover AWS, Azure, GCP, and open source tools here. It's a 80 hours program. There are more than 50 plus hands-on labs. There are more than 10 plus real-time projects that we'll be building. Consider that each and every cloud has a level 4 architecture project. One on AWS, one on Azure, one on GCP, and open source tools. With one-on-one debugging sessions where you get more personal time with the trainer. Okay, saying that, let's quickly understand the pricing structure of our program. It's really awesome. We don't have one pricing structure. We do have 3 different pricing structure. Why? Because we do have more supporting features in that. Let's try to understand that right now. And again, please make sure you stay till the end of this particular program, because still I want to show how I'm going to deploy my model to production. And then still there's a lot to discuss how you can be part of AI industry, and you can download a free ebooks about MLOps only if you stay till the end of this particular program. So let's get started. And again, there is a surprise for the folks who are going to stick till end of this particular program. I would say it's a bonus. Okay, what's the pricing for this particular program? So we do have 3 different pricing plans. We call it as basic plan, advanced plan, and advanced plus. So our advanced plan, the topmost plan, will be starting from 49,999. It's the top the plan that we do have, so where you get some advanced supporting features. So then we do have advanced plan starts from 43,999. Our topmost plan, it is called advanced plus, starting from 49,999. Our advanced plan will be starting from 43,999, and we do have a basic plan. The starter plan will be starting from just 40,999 itself. Okay, wait a minute. Why do we have three different pricing plans? Is there any difference in learning? Doesn't matter. So whether you take basic plan or advanced or maybe advanced plus plan, doesn't matter. You'll be learning everything in a curriculum. There is no variation in what you're learning. There's no exception in what you're learning. So whether you take basic or advanced plus, every candidate will get an opportunity to attend the live sessions, access to recordings and debugging sessions. So they are same in all the plans. But let's say which plan really fits for you. Let's say, for example, you're really interested in upskilling only. You can take a basic plan. You can attend live sessions, access to recordings and debugging sessions. But let's say you need some premium support features. You can go for advanced or maybe advanced plus. Usually professionals like to go for advanced or advanced plus. So what do you get here? So here you get some other supporting features. For example, you get resume preparation support, 6 months of technical job support, and bonus reattendance opportunity. So what is this bonus reattendance opportunity? Is nothing but by signing up once, you get twice the chance to take a program, which is nothing but, let's say you're signing up for April batch. Not only you can attend April batch, you can retake this live sessions once again in next batch, which is going to happen in July. So you get twice the opportunity. So what could be the quite advantages here? Maybe because 99% of our professionals who take our programs are working professionals. So maybe due to some busy working schedule, you might miss few weekends, so you get another chance to retake it. Or maybe you need a revisioning once again for the entire program. Or every batch there's a new syllabus update, maybe you need to get updated with a new syllabus. For example, this batch as a new module number 11, it's no more MLOps only. We'll be also covering LLMOps. LLMOps is also included, where you can learn how to deliver your large language models to production. So this is about bonus reattendance opportunity, and then comes 6 months of technical job support. So folks, when we talk about this particular training, there are two phases. Phase number 1 is skill development. So then comes phase number 2 is a support that we are offering. So when it comes to phase number 2, this is where 6 months to 12 months support comes into the picture. So there are two categories how this support is being utilized by our participants. Category number 1, consider that most of the professionals, obviously you want to upskill and you want to go for a better job outside. How we are helping you guys to achieve your goals. When it comes to category number 1, let's say here we help you optimize your resumes. Consider that maybe you want to apply for ML engineering job roles, MLOps engineering job roles. Maybe you want to apply for MLOps specialist, architect kind of roles. So here we help you bias your resumes accordingly. And let's say you got selected for any interview, we will be also helping you decoding your job description. What do you mean by that? So because we help you, let's say once you have your job description, we will be helping you decoding this particular job description, where we will be providing you an insights regarding what kind of a questions they're going to ask you in an interview. How are you going to deal with that questions? How are you going to mention the stories about the projects that we have built during a program? So because this is what the confidence and clarity that you need to clear any interview. And that's how it is already helping for our existing participants. So another category, the category number 2, consider that you're already in a job, you're working, but you need some assistance, you need some documentation, you need some sample code to get started. You can also use this support accordingly. So this is about our 6 months of technical job support. Then comes the topmost plan, the advanced plus. Everything in advance is included, but instead of 6 month support, you get 1 year support over there. And here comes the another interesting feature. It's called instant access to recordings, which is nothing but you don't want to wait for next 2.5 months to get started with a program. The folks who will be having an advanced plus plan get access to our previous batch recordings. You can get started in next 24 hours with the support, and parallelly you can attend live sessions on every weekends. So this is about our topmost plan. So let's say if you want to check the pricing in USD, Our advanced plus plan will be starting from let's say $749, and our advanced plan will be starting from $649, and our basic plan just starts from $599. And here comes the surprise for the folks who had made your time till this. Okay, here we have some offers running, especially for the folks who are going to attend, who has attended our demo session. So we are running some summer offers, and unfortunately, we do have only 3 seats. We don't have more seats because this is our 3rd demo that we are running. We just have only 3 seats left for this particular program, and we are running this summer offers till 2nd April. And we don't have one offers, we do have 3 different offers just to make your life easy. Let's talk about our option number 1, offer number 1 otherwise. Okay, let's get started. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so offer number 1, we call it as free upgradation. So most of the folks, they want to take advanced or maybe advanced plus, right? So because that's where the more support and you get more freedom in taking a program. Let's say if you want to take an advanced plan, which will be costing $43,999. So you don't, I mean, if you're interested in advanced plan, don't take advanced plan. All you need to do, go ahead and register for basic plan, which is costing just $40,999, and we will be upgrading you to advanced plan completely for free. Yes, let me mention it again. Register for basic, but we will be upgrading you to advanced. So you can save 3,000 rupees on a registration. And the EMI starts from just 1,700 rupees a month. And again, this is only for 3 seats because only we have 3 seats left for this offer. It's a first come first serve because it's our 3rd demo that we're conducting, and this offers will be valid till 2nd of April. Otherwise, consider that, do you want to get started with this program immediately? Then don't wait. All you need to do, go ahead and register for advanced plan, which will be costing $43,999, and we will be upgrading you to the topmost plan, that is advanced plus, which will be costing nearly 50,000 rupees, and EMI start from just 1,800 rupees. So this is the free upgradation offer that we do have. And let's go to option number 2. Are you not interested? You're not interested in free upgradation? Then go for option number 2, a no cost EMI and a discounted offers comes here. Okay, here comes an option, but you cannot climb both the offers together. You can climb only one offer at a time. So let's say if you're interested in let's say option number 2, here are the 2 options. Option number 1, you can go for a discounted offer. We can provide you a maximum of 5% discount on a basic and advanced plan. That means your pricing will be scaling down to 38,950 when it comes to basic plan, but when it comes to advanced, 41,800, from 43 to 41,800. And let's say if you're interested to go for the topmost plan, we can offer you maximum 10% discount. That means your price will be scaling down to 44,999. So that means a discounted offer for you. Otherwise, if you're not interested in that, you can go for a no cost EMI offer. So that means you won't be paying any additional interest rate. Consider that when you're paying an EMI, you'll be paying additional interest rate to your bank. So we will be offering a no cost EMI, 0 interest for maximum of 6 months. When you for basic plan, you can get maximum of 3 months tenure. For advanced or maybe advanced plus, we can give you maximum of 6 months tenure offer for you. And again, this offer is pretty much limited for only 3 seats left that we do have. And why do you think Citron Technologies, we are the best people for you to upskill yourself into MLOps? So we've been there in this particular field almost for a decade. So you can learn more about us by googling www.citrontech.com and our awards and honors. We've been representing ourselves in many international stages. So not only we are coming from, let's say, training education perspective. So we work in 2 phases. The phase number 1 is for product development. As I mentioned, we consult and we develop a product for organizations where we have an expertise in working with manufacturing industries. We have developed an AI product for organizations like TVS, Ashok Leyland, and other such organizations where our expertise also comes from. The phase number 2, what we are actually working in a skill development phase. And please go ahead and listen to the testimonials of our previous batch participants. So
you don't take my word, my participants does talks about our training. So where you can get some better clarity and confidence in our particular training actually. So take a look. I will be sharing the PDF where you can able to check all these testimonials of our previous batch candidates, where you can get some better clarity and confidence about our training. Saying that, so now let us have a quick look on the curriculum that we are offering. So let me just quickly also share you the links in a chat window. So where you can able to download the curriculum and the registration link. Okay. Perfect. So here we go. I have shared a links in my chat window right now. So let me just give a quick description of the links that I've shared in a chat window. The first link that I shared in a chat window is a registration link. By clicking that link, you will be redirected to the registration link where you can able to proceed with the registration process. So if you click the link, you'll be redirected to this page. So here you can learn more about our program. Here comes the awesome curriculum. In the next few minutes, I will be also discussing about the curriculum that we do have. Stay connected. So here in this page itself, you can able to check our curriculum. Totally, we do have 14 modules. It's really robust, multi-cloud, open source. So you can see the tools that we do cover. You can also watch our demo of our previous sessions. And if you further scroll down, you can also listen to testimonials of our previous batch participants over here. Yeah, and once you hit register now, you can just mention your name here and the phone number. And once you hit next, you'll be redirected to a page where you can able to select. So definitely I will be opening a session for Q&A. Please make sure you ask a lot of questions. I'm going to answer all of your questions, and feel free to also call me, text me anytime. I also shared my phone number in a chat window. Please call me because we can have more discussion. Let me just try to understand your requirement so I can answer your questions. Okay, so yes, once you come to this page, here you can pick the plan. Let's say if you're from India, you can pick the plan that you like a basic plan or advanced plus. If you're an international participant, you can also pick the pricing in dollars. You can also hit more info to get to know about the features that we're offering. And once you hit let's say pay now, so here you will get the details. Okay, again enter the email and phone number for registration purpose. And here you can pick any different kind of payment options that you like whether you want to go for direct payment, the card. We do have EMI options, as I mentioned. EMI options we do have starting from 3 months to 24 months EMI plans that we do have. You can pick the one option that really fits for you. Yeah, so this is about the registration page. Now let's quickly take a look about the awesome curriculum that we got. Let me just open the curriculum. Here we go. So, and let's say I have shared the 3 different links. Let me just share it once again. The first link, you can access the registration page. Click on a second link, you can download the same PDF where you can able to get a complete clarity about the curriculum, the testimonials, everything is there in this PDF also. Okay, now let us quickly take a look of the curriculum that we do have, folks. Let me just scroll down. Let me just click on the curriculum. Yeah, totally we have 14 modules. Yep, let's see what we have in our first module. Module number 1, MLOps introduction. So in this first module, we will be walking you guys through everything related to MLOps in this world. So talking about MLOps challenges, machine learning lifecycle, and how it is related. We are talking about MLOps, but still, what is this DevOps? What is this AI ops? What is this model ops? We'll be talking about LLMOps, large language model operations, and FMOps also. What is this FMOps? FMOps stands for foundation model operations, and GitOps also. And here in module number 1, so we'll be discussing about the actual customer case studies. We'll be taking a couple of companies case studies, and we'll be understanding
how they have implemented CI/CDs in their production. And let's say if I further scroll down in module number 2, here we'll be talking about MLOps, ML and MLOps stages. We'll be diving deep into the different kind of versionings we do, testings, the CI/CD, reproducibility, deployment and monitoring. Then comes MLOps architecture. This is where we will be discussing about open source tools, cloud source tools. I mean, when it comes to open source tools, we'll be having a discussion about tools like Kubeflow, Apache Airflow, MLflow, Metaflow, Kedro, ZenML, MLrun, and CML. And then comes cloud platforms. We'll be discussing how does this level 4 architecture looks like on AWS, GCP, and Azure. And let's say if you go to module number 3, so this is where we'll be getting started with Git. That means we'll be getting started with a Git from scratch, understanding how to use Git based commands, working with remote repositories, other things. And then comes module number 4. This is where we do cover DevOps. So yes, this particular program is also inclusive of DevOps, but DevOps that is needed for MLOps. So introduction to CI/CD. Here we'll be covering DevOps tools on all the 3 cloud platforms. DevOps on top of AWS. We'll be covering all the DevOps tools and one project on AWS DevOps. We'll be covering all the GCP DevOps tools and one project on GCP DevOps. We'll be covering the complete DevOps suite on Azure and one project on Azure DevOps for building DevOps pipelines. Then comes module number 5. Here we'll be covering Dockers and Kubernetes. We'll be covering Dockers and Kubernetes from scratch. You'll be learning how to Dockerize your first ML model, how to deploy it, how to invoke it. Then comes understanding Kubernetes from scratch, understanding how to deploy Kubernetes clusters, how to deploy a model, how to invoke your model that you are deployed on Kubernetes infrastructure. Then comes module number 6, Kubernetes deployment strategies. Here we'll be picking one of a cloud. It can be AWS or Azure or GCP. We'll be working on a real-time clusters on top of those cloud platforms. One project will be built on any one of the cloud. Then comes module number 7, introduction to model management tools. Here we'll be diving deep into data versioning tools, code versioning tools, experiment tracking, model registries, model monitoring tools. Here we'll be covering MLflow from scratch. There are 2 projects. First, deploying an MLflow infrastructure. The second project, building, training, and deploying your ML models through MLflow stack. Then comes, we'll be covering DVC, hands-on projects. We'll be learning how to use DVC for versioning a data, and we'll be using any one of a cloud to version a data. Then comes module number 8. We do have separate module for feature store. We'll be discussing about various different feature stores that we do have outside, like SageMaker feature store, Vertex AI, Databricks, Tecton, Feast. And in this module, we'll be using a Feast, which is an open source feature store. We'll be building our own feature store to version our features. Then comes module number 9. Here we'll be covering Cloud ML Service 101. This is a module where we will be building the level 4 architecture projects that I mentioned. On AWS, we'll be covering Azure SageMaker Studio. We'll be building one end-to-end MLOps pipeline on top of it. On GCP, we'll be covering Vertex AI, and we'll be covering one end-to-end MLOps pipelines on top of it. On Azure, we'll be covering Azure Machine Learning Studio, and we'll be covering one end-to-end MLOps pipeline on top of it. Then comes module number 10. We do cover Kubeflow. Yes. Let's say tomorrow if you're going to work with an organization, they are completely going open source, but they want to use some open source tool, Kubeflow comes into the picture. For example, I mentioned Spotify. So how do you build complete open source pipelines? So here we'll be learning how to deploy the Kubeflow infrastructure and how do we build, train, and deploy your ML pipelines on top of it. So then comes module number 11. It's a new module for this batch. MLOps for LLMs. How do you deliver your large language models to productions, or how do you deliver your generative AI models to productions will be also covered in this particular program. Then comes module number 12, introduction to model monitoring tools. We do have a separate module for that. Here we'll be discussing about the different cloud platforms and what they offer as an SDKs to monitor your ML models. So then comes, we'll be picking one of a cloud and we'll be also doing a model monitoring on top of it. Then comes module number 13. As I mentioned, this program is also inclusive of commercial tools, but we won't be doing we won't be doing hands-on on top of it. We'll be doing a demo because you cannot afford the commercial tools because you need to be an organization to afford that. Then comes module number 14, the final module, the post-deployment challenges. Here we'll be discussing about the challenges after deployment, like loading issues for your model, latency issues, or maybe resource utilization issues. And we'll be also using open source tool, evidently AI, for doing model monitoring like data drift. So this is the complete robust curriculum that we are offering, and you can also further scroll down in this PDF. You can check the skills that you're going to master and the kind of tools that we will be using in this particular program. And if you further scroll down, you can also get the pricing details, both in INR and USD. And you can get the feature explanations about that features, what is the 6 months of job support, all this stuff. And if you further scroll down, you can also listen to the testimonials of our participants, how they have benefited after upskilling. Okay. Yeah, saying that, this is about our program, and for this particular offers that I'm talking about, we do have just 3 seats left. Please make sure you go ahead and block your seats before we sold out. Okay, saying that, let's quickly take a look of a demo that we are giving, and then I will be opening a session for a Q&A. So then you can ask all your questions. Okay, let's go to a SageMaker console. Let's see what happened there. Okay, so here we are in a SageMaker console, and let's see what just happened for our project that we are deploying there. Okay, let's go to endpoint. Okay, now you can see that before we going for a demo, you can see that we don't have any endpoint here, but we do have one endpoint. It says demo March 30 staging. That means now my model got deployed to a staging environment. It says in service. That means now it is in service. And now let me show you how am I going to invoke this ML model. How am I going to generate some predictions out of it? Perfect. Now I'm going to use my Jupyter notebooks here because I'm going to invoke my ML model that is deployed to a staging environment. I'm going to push some payload. I'm going to give some input so it can give me some predictions for me. I'm going to use this simple Python script for that. So then I will open a session for Q&A. You can also unmute your mic and you can also talk to me. So get ready for that. Here you can see that I'm going to replace my endpoint name, and here is my abalone.single.test. It's a data set that I'm inputting to my model. It's going to make a prediction of an age of an abalone. So now I have saving it. I'm going to hit run, and now you can able to see the prediction output from my ML model. It says 8.16. That's the age of my abalone. I'm invoking my ML model that I've deployed to my staging environment. Okay, so but still I have to show you how am I going to approve my ML model to be deployed to production. I will show that later. So now we will go for a quick Q&A. So let's get started. Unmute your mic. You can also talk to me. If you're going to talk to me, please mention your name, then you can ask your question. Please go ahead. Meantime, I will also start answering the questions in the chat window. Yep.
Good evening, Sarath Kumar.
Good evening. So may I know your name?
Yeah, myself Mukesh.
Mukesh, ask your question, please.
Yeah, does a individual require coding knowledge to become MLOps?
Perfect. I got your question. That's a awesome question. So there's a lot of follow-ups questions from this. Let me answer along with that. Okay, so do you need programming knowledge for you to work as MLOps engineer or to get into AI industry? I would definitely not say saying that okay, without a programming expertise you can become MLOps engineers. I would definitely not say that, but expertise that you need might vary. So consider that if you want to become an MLOps engineer or someone who want to work in a senior positions in MLOps, like MLOps lead, MLOps architect kind of a positions, having some basic knowledge of Python would definitely help, but not an expertise like a data scientist. But let's say if you're going to ask a question, so I want to become a data scientist, do I need to have a programming knowledge? I would say 100%. You need to be really expert in a Python. You need to have a good idea of statistics, probability, and algorithms when you want to become a data scientist. But let's say if you're going to work as an MLOps engineer, MLOps leader, architect, you don't need expertise like a data scientist, but having a basic idea of programming in Python would definitely help. So how we can able to help you? But here, MLOps specialization program, this is not a data science program. We don't teach data science here. We don't teach data engineering, or we don't teach Python programming here. This is not a Python programming session. But how can we help you? Because we have seen, especially there are candidates who say that I'm not really good at programming, especially let's say if you have any basics, may not be Python, but if you have a basic understanding of C, Java, or C++, definitely you can able to get started. So how we are additionally helping a candidates is something like this, because we don't just conduct MLOps programs, we do have other programs where we do teach Python programming. So here, especially for the folks who have a necessity, we'll be giving our resources for Python for free. We do have other Python tutorials which will help you to get started with a Python, refreshing your Python basics. So especially for the folks who are going to make this request saying that if they need a Python resources, we will give that for free, especially with MLOps specialization program. But the Python programming tutorials, which is completely out of scope for this particular program. I believe that answered your question. Please let me know if others has any questions. So can a non-IT person can take this particular program? Definitely yes, it's possible. But if a non-technical person, if you are really capable of, okay, if you have an interest to upskill yourself into technical skill sets, learning these tools, working with that, definitely it works. Okay, in the meantime, if you have any other questions, please feel free to just mention in the chat window. Someone just asked me, is this number in a WhatsApp? Definitely yes. We have shared two numbers. Let me just share this links once again in the chat window. Both the numbers are in a WhatsApp. Please ping me, call me. If you're also comfortable in a WhatsApp, we can have a discussion. Perfect. Please make sure you also unmute your mic and talk to me. Meantime, let me just answer the questions that you do have in a chat window. Okay,
Hello,
I will also get ready. Hey, hi. Yeah, someone is trying to talk. You can mention a name. Let's have a conversation.
Hi, yes, this is Naughty. Um, I,
Hey,
I have
Nochi,
a
yes.
yes. So yes,
Go
thank
ahead.
you so much for your seminar. I have a DevOps background, so I have a little bit of understanding
Great.
with the DevOps practices, but I do want to transition to
Perfect.
MLOps. So, but then I'm just a
Perfect.
bit confused though. How does Kubernetes get involved with MLOps? Like, what is it that you're scaling? I think it's because I'm coming from the DevOps side of things, so I'm confused with MLOps,
Perfect.
what you need to containerize and why.
What we know, that's an awesome question. Okay, I might start talking. Let's say if I start talking these topics, I might talk for next 1 more hour. Let me just give you a clarity. First, let me answer the first question, Naughty. DevOps engineers, I would say they are the perfect fit for you to get into MLOps, because there is some advantages for the DevOps folks comparing with the data scientists. Because let's say for a data scientist, they have no idea what a CI/CD is, what is this Dockers or Kubernetes or source code version tools. But when it comes to DevOps engineers, you do also already come from DevOps background. You do understand how you build automation in a software industry, how to use CI/CD pipelines, because the traditional DevOps tools are common in MLOps. But now let me just come to the second question. So why do we use Kubernetes in MLOps, or why do we use Dockers in MLOps? So we do understand what is Dockers. Pretty much putting in a layman terms, what is this Dockers? So Dockers are the technology. It's a process of packing your software. So we do understand what is Docker containers are. I mean, we know the containers which is traveling in the ships, right? Which is used for packing your goods and traveling from one point to another point, like traveling from one part of a world to another part of a world. Similarly, containers in a software, which is actually used for packing your software. It can be any software. So here we are talking about packing your ML models, and why we deploy ML models as Dockerized ML models on a Kubernetes infrastructure. So consider that, let's say I want to build a workflow. Let's say I want to build a workflow in the process of building ML models. So consider that I might, instead of building one container, I might build different container. Consider that I might have container number 1, container number 2, and container number 3. I might have 4 different containers for this orchestration. So this is my first container where I might do data preparation, data engineering otherwise. So in the next container, I might be doing model training. This is where I might do model training. In the third container, I might do model evaluation. In my fourth container, this is where I might deploy my ML models. So this is where my deployment happens. So this is how I can able to use my Kubernetes infrastructure accordingly. Otherwise, let's say if I talk about my Kubernetes, let's say on top of Kubernetes infrastructure, I might run another framework called Kubeflow. So Kubeflow is an open source framework that runs on Kubernetes. By using Kubeflow, you can create this ML workflows that I mentioned. So the same kind of a workflow that I defined on my SageMaker Studio. Let's say if I go to my pipelines, if I go to my pipeline which I executed 1 hour ago, so you can able to create the same kind of a workflow on top of Kubernetes, or you can also able to create the same kind of a workflow on top of Kubeflow. So you can able to see this blocks. This each and every block can be a container, right? That's how it works. I hope this particular question has been answered. I believe, yeah, not cheap.
Yeah, hi, sir. Atish Kumar here.
Hey, Abhishek Kumar. Yeah, go ahead. What's your question?
I want to ask, like, how are you going to implement Jenkins here?
Perfect. So let's say we talked about various different CI/CD tools, right? So let's say if I go back to
Yes.
this particular slide, let's say here we
Is
are
it like
talking about CI/CD tooling.
SageMaker?
Yeah. So when we talk about Jenkins, Jenkins is an open source CI/CD tool. It's a best CI tool that is outside. So here, not only Jenkins, yes, we're going to discuss about Jenkins, but not only Jenkins, we'll be covering. So we'll be covering other CI/CD tools that is outside. Let's say, for example, a competitor of Jenkins in AWS code pipelines in AWS. We do have cloud build in GCP. We do have Azure pipelines in Azure cloud platform. So how can we use this CI/CD pipelines when it comes to MLOps, right? So CI or CD. CI, let's say we talk about all about building. CD is all about deployment. So maybe consider that you have your ML model. So let's say when we talk about ML model, the format of a model, let's consider that model.pickle file. It's a format of a ML model, for example. Let's say you want to Dockerize your ML model, but you need to Dockerize. So to Dockerize your ML model, I can use my CI pipeline. My CI pipeline will help me to Dockerize my ML model. And then I use my CD pipeline to take this model and to deploy this Dockerized ML model on a Docker service. So this can be a one way I can able to utilize my CI pipeline and CD pipelines. And I can also use my CI pipelines to execute this workflow. So consider this workflow. So when it comes to this AWS example, what you're seeing in my screen, this particular workflow is currently executed by CI pipeline actually. Yeah. Let me know if you have any other questions.
Yeah, don't we require Linux here?
I mean, it depends. So consider that, okay, I know where you're coming. So consider that you want to, uh, let's say you want to deploy your Jenkins, let's say you want to deploy your Jenkins infrastructure, right? On top of some kind of a virtual machine. Let's say on top of a virtual
Yes,
machine, you want to deploy a Jenkins infrastructure. What kind of a
yes.
virtual machine? This virtual machine can be a Linux, this can be Windows, blah, 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 right?
Windows.
So definitely, I might not say that, okay, in case if your question is, do we need a Linux expertise? Maybe not for the MLOps, but having a basic idea of Linux, we will be using virtual machines here. So in, for example, the Kubeflow example that I mentioned, we will be deploying it on a Ubuntu based virtual machine. The basic commands we will be taught and we will be using in this particular program itself, but you don't need an expertise in a Linux.
Okay. Whatever the tools you showed in the curriculum, we are going to cover all, right?
100% whatever we have mentioned in the curriculum as part of an hands-on, all those tools will be covered in this particular program. So everything you can see that each and every module which says hands-on, that means there is some project that will be building some hands-on that will be able to know that. Yeah.
And what about the cloud tools? You're going with depth or only the tools which you are showing in the cloud you are going to?
So all the tools that we have mentioned in the curriculum, including the cloud tool, will be covered actually, Abhishek.
Okay.
Everything. Let's say it can be AWS code pipelines, it can be code commit, it can be code deploy. We will be using, because let's say when we are building DevOps pipelines or MLOps pipelines. See, like when we talk about MLOps project, folks, it's a orchestration are combinations of multiple tools together. So multiple dependencies, multiple tools has to work together actually. Yeah.
Okay. And last question, like there is no role of Terraform here?
Yes, that's a good question. So yes, you can able to use Terraform or Bicep code on top of Azure. I know what you're talking about. So yes,
Mhm.
we will be also covering infrastructure as a code. So infrastructure as a code, for example, Terraform that you're going to talk about, Terraform is a tool where you can able to write a scripts and you can able to deploy this particular scripts on a cloud platform, which can able to create an infrastructure. So yes, when
Mhm.
we talk about Azure, we'll be using a Bicep, which is again similar to a Terraform. When it comes to AWS, will be using, let's say, the cloud formation templates. It can be a JSON based templates, it can be a Terraform based templates to deploy the infrastructure. So we do cover GitOps in this particular program, which is a complete infrastructure as a code. So Mukesh, please feel free to call me after this call. I mean, after we done with this meeting, definitely we can connect. Yeah, I believe I answered your questions. So please let me know, folks, if anyone else has a question. I do see that Godwind asked a question in a chat window. Will we get access to all the cloud platforms for doing a hands-on projects? That's a good question. So he's asking, how do we use these cloud platforms when we do hands-on? So way it works, let's say you will be creating your own free trial accounts on a cloud platform. Let's say when it comes to AWS or Azure or GCP, they provide a free trial. When it comes to AWS, they provide 1 year free trial. Azure and GCP, they offers credits for us to get started. So this free trial limits, which is offered by these cloud platforms, would be more than enough for us to explore in this particular program actually. Yeah, even after completing a program, if you want to explore that for your own practice, this could be quite enough. Okay, folks, so mention your questions, unmute your mic. I'm going to spare a few more minutes.
Hi.
Meantime, hey, hi, go ahead.
Yes. So what you did on SageMaker, is it like the same? Is it a similar platform like Databricks? I'm just, I just know a little bit
Okay,
about Databricks, but then I don't know a lot, so I want to know
got
if
it.
it's like the same platform or similar platforms.
Okay, so Databricks is completely different than Amazon SageMaker Studio that I'm demonstrating, Nachi. Let's say if I want to compare, let's say if you're referring to Azure Databricks, for example, right? So yes, Azure Databricks, let's say, generally Databricks is more into, let's say, building data pre-processing workloads that has been used for, maybe I want to build a data pipelines. Yes, Databricks is also used for machine learning use cases, but Amazon SageMaker is quite different than that. Amazon SageMaker is built for the complete end-to-end building ML pipelines. That is more into building ML pipelines, not building data engineering pipelines otherwise. But if I want to refer similar tool in Azure, comparing Amazon SageMaker Studio, Azure has Azure Machine Learning Studio. When it comes to GCP, they have a Vertex AI. Yeah, but Amazon SageMaker is different than Databricks. Okay, Vikas is asking a question. How can I opt for option number 1? Any link? Vikas, let me just help you. So before we getting sold out, please go ahead and register for the program. So Vikas, let me share you the link in the chat window, Vikas. Okay, all you need to do, click on a link. I have shared the link in the chat window. The first link is for the registration. Once you click on the first link, you'll be redirected to this registration page, Vikas. All you need to do, once you're in a registration page, click on register now button, enter your details. One second. Okay, sorry. And all you need to do, let's say if you want to go for the first option, so let's say I'm talking about the first offer. Let me just quickly give you the reference of this offers, folks. The option number 1, we call it as a free upgradation. So let's say first have it a goal. What exactly that you're looking forward. Consider that you want to get started with this particular program immediately. Let's say when you're registering for advanced plus plan, you can get an access to recordings of a previous batch in next 24 hours itself. You can get started. But let's say as part of a free upgradation offer, you don't want to register for an advanced plus plan which is costing 49,999. All you need to do, register for advanced plan, you get advanced plus. But let's say if you're looking for advanced plan, the middle one, don't register for advanced plan. Go ahead and register for a basic plan, but we will be upgrading you to advanced plan. That's how it works. So you're looking for, I'm sorry about that, 1 second. So you're looking for advanced plan, then register for a basic plan. We will be upgrading you to advanced plan. Or let's say if you're looking for the topmost plan, register for advanced plan, we will be upgrading you to the topmost plan. That's how it works. So the option 2 is, let's say, but you cannot climb free upgradation and discounted offer together. You can pick one option from these 3 options. Let's say you can also get 5% off. That means you'll get the price cut for 38,950. You can get 5% off on advance also. That means your price will be scaled down to 41,800. And you can also go for the topmost plan. We will provide maximum of 10% off, and your pricing will be scaled down to 44,999. Otherwise, let's say if you don't want to go to one-shot payment, if you want some installments without interest, we can provide you a no-cost EMI maximum for 6 months. That means you won't be paying any additional interest. You'll be paying exactly the same amount, maybe for the next 6 months, which can be the most comfortable option for you. Great. Okay, now saying that, I'm going to spare a few more minutes. Go ahead and ask your question. Okay, in the meantime, I will show you. I have showed you how I deployed my model to staging environment. Now you can see that my model is up and running in my staging environment. But now I will show you how do I deploy my ML model to production. To deploy your ML model to production, we need to use a CI/CD pipelines. Here I'm using AWS code pipelines. So here you can see that I have one pipeline. It says in progress, which is my model deployment pipeline. So now I will go inside my model deployment pipeline, and it is actually waiting for me to approve my model to be deployed to the production. So here you can able to take a look of a pipeline structure. You can see that my pipeline looks like my deployment pipeline. These are the various different stages I have. So here is my source pipeline, where is my code is coming, and here is my build pipeline, basically a CI pipeline. This is where I'm building my ML model. Maybe I want to Dockerize it, or maybe I want to do some testing. Everything I will be doing this in a build pipeline. Then comes our deploy staging stage. This is where I'm going ahead and deploying my model to production. You can see that here my model is actually waiting for my approval. So this is what I'm talking about. We don't want to automatically deploy a model to production. Rather than that, we need to manually approve it to get deployed to the production. So here I'm going to hit review button. And here I have an option to reject it or approve it. I'm going to approve it. I would say all okay. Then I will hit submit. So this will go ahead and deploy my model to production. So now we can see that
my deploy prod is going to start running in next few minutes. So you can also track your deployment by going to your studio. Let's say if I hit this refresh button I have, you can see that there's a new update. Demo-March 30-prod is creating. It's going to take few minutes to be deployed. Okay, that's it, folks. So I will spare 2 more minutes. If anyone else has a question, unmute your mic and we can have a conversation. Okay, Vikas is asking a question. How do we get to know that if we are purchasing an advanced course, whether we've been upgraded to advanced plus plan? That's a good question, because how it works, let's say once your registration has been done for advanced plan, you will be upgraded to advanced plus. First, you will be receiving an acknowledgement from our side. And how do you get to know that you do have advanced plus plan or not? In next 24 hours, you will be having an access to the recordings. Only the folks who have advanced plus plan will have access to recordings. So in next 24 hours after the registration is completed, you will have access to recordings, because that's the indication saying that you have an advanced plus plan. Okay, I have one more question. Ramesh is asking, I have a question for how many years of expertise in this course works? Okay, that's a good question. So let me just tell you way it works, Ramesh. Let's say when it comes to our MLOps specialization program, we do have candidates ranging from, okay, here is the explanation. Okay, let me just go to this marker. So we do have candidates ranging from 1 years of experience to, we have seen maximum of 18 to 20 years of experience candidates also take a program. So generally, let's say 18 to 20 years of candidates taking a program. And what kind of a different roles and responsibilities you can able to expect here, as I mentioned, so you can work as a data engineer, you can work as a data scientist, you can work as an ML engineer, you can work as an MLOps engineer, right? So let's say there are beginner level positions. There are beginner level positions in MLOps engineering also, data science and data engineering also. I mean, someone who is a 1-year-old candidate, still he can apply for MLOps engineering job roles. But let's talk about someone who has a more than 8+ years of experience, or maybe it depends on an organization. It starts from, let's say, 6 to 8, let's say between that. Someone who has more than 6 or 8+ years of experience, you can also apply for a leadership positions in MLOps. For example, let's say I'm talking about MLOps lead engineer, or MLOps architect positions, MLOps specialist kind of a role. So I mean, once you have more than 8+ years of experience, let's say here, this can be the leadership positions, what we usually used to call. So what this kind of a peoples do, let's say if you wonder who gets to decide, let's say who gets to decide actually, let's say which tool to be used in the organization, whether we can able to use AWS, whether we can able to use open source tool, who does this architecture, I mean, so basically this people's own leadership positions does it actually. So I mean, and again, so you won't be building usually MLOps engineers that I'm talking about, like junior MLOps engineers will be working with your I mean senior MLOps engineers. So you will be responsible for building pipelines, deploying infrastructures, monitoring infrastructures, all this stuff. Yes, MLOps is in the range of starting from various different roles here. Yep. So yes, Atish, we'll be also discussing about security tools, talking about, let's say, when we talk about cloud platform, Atish, the security is by default is built on top of it, especially when we're going to work on a storage platforms, machine learning tools. We'll be also going through the kind of an options they have to encrypt the data, securing your platforms, all those stuff. Yes, but this is not completely into security, I would say that, but it is part of our program actually. So not cheap, definitely yes. You can pay the fee in installments. I mean, I don't know whether installment option supports in your country. I mean, in case if you're from India, that's perfect, because I don't think so. The installment options might work. Let's say if you're from different country. But we do have this EMI options. Let's say if you're from India, you can go for EMI options. We do offer EMI options for, let's say, starting from just 1,800 rupees a month. You can get maximum tenure of 24 months. You can pay, you can have an extension for 24 months in EMI. Otherwise, we do also offer this no cost EMI that I mentioned. You won't be paying any additional interest. So you'll be exactly paying the same amount. Consider that you're going for an advanced plan, which is costing 43,999 divided by 6. That means it will come somewhere around 6,000 rupees a month. You won't be paying any additional interest rate. So if an EMI option doesn't support, so otherwise you can also think about the price cut. You can get the maximum price cut and you can go for the remaining payment option in your country. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, we have one more question from Vikas. Okay, Vikas, the way advanced plus plan upgradation works, Vikas, you won't be registering with 49,999. So you won't be paying 49,999 when you are getting upgraded to advanced plus. You will be just paying 43,999, and you will be getting for the advanced plus plan, which is worth of 49,999. So that's how it works. The payment that you're going to make is 43,999, not 49,999. You'll be saving 6,000 rupees. That doesn't mean that we'll be providing a 6,000 rupees. That's not how it works. You'll be paying for an advanced plan which is costing 49,000, but we will be upgrading you to 49,999 worth of advanced plus plan. Let me know if you have any confusion in that. So not sure if you're from US, I don't think so. The installment might work because I don't see, because definitely always we'll be having a candidates from US. I don't see ever the installment option work for them, but you can just try. I guess we do have some options on PayPal, which is something like a pay later option. Maybe you can also check that. That should able to work for you. Ketan, so let's say Ketan is asking a question. So can we really sit on a lead or architect positions as the lead roles requires extreme experience? So consider that I will never say that, okay, have 2 years of experience in some kind of a domain. Let's say if you are coming from a DevOps background, data engineering background, data analysis background, data engineer. So I will never say that, okay, you can become a lead position with that particular experience. So way it works, consider that, maybe let me just put it in this way. Let's say you do have maybe, let's say, consider that you do have an 8 years of experience in DevOps background, and do you have a chance to apply for lead positions in MLOps, like MLOps lead, MLOps architect? Definitely the answer is yes. So how? Because here, when you're coming from a DevOps background, let's say when you're transforming yourself into the lead positions, you do have some expertise to demonstrate. I mean, you do already coming from a DevOps background, you do have a good expertise in CI/CD, source versioning, testing, and other infrastructure as a code services also, which you can able to easily demonstrate that in your MLOps lead positions role. But what you might be lagging is on a MLOps tool sets. You might have no idea on MLOps tool sets like machine learning tools, model registries, data version control tools, which we can able to help you in this MLOps specialization program actually. So who will be a trainer? Definitely yes, 100% yes. I am going to be a trainer. It's me, Sharath. Yeah, I will be the trainer for this particular program. So yeah, so I will be a trainer for this particular program. You don't want to worry. So it's going to be more fun like this throughout the 2.5 months. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to spend 2 more minutes. In the meantime, I will be sharing a links once again in the chat window. So please make sure you block your seats before we sold out. And this offers is for the only 3 seats left that we do have so far. So the first link is for the registration, and the second link you can download the curriculum. And we do have a third link where you can download the free ebooks as I promised. Okay. Perfect. So give me a question in case if you have any other question. Let me just check the chat window if there is any other questions I didn't answer. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, we are in time. Thank you so much, folks. I believe you enjoyed this particular program. So please make sure you sign up before we sold out. We do have 3 seats left. And make sure, let's say if you're looking for advanced plan, that means you will be getting an advanced plus plan. You will be having an access to recordings in next 24 hours. You can get started with the program, with the support. Don't miss it. Please go ahead and register. And if you have any questions, if you need some consulting, you have some confusions, please feel free to call or text to this number anytime. I will be answering you, and let me give you insights about this particular program. So thank you so much. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll connect back in our live sessions. Have fun, folks. Enjoy. Bye.